What's up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook stream where we'll be talking about the Sandman. Uh, the time has come for the ultimate goth urban fantasy novel show uh, to be discussed on the Silver Spook stream. If I go any longer without talking about it, I feel like it's gonna like that's gonna be a seems like that's all everybody's talking about nowadays. But who knows? Apparently everybody's talking on TikTok. So that when I say everybody, it's probably a limited scope. But anyways, Western. We're going to be talking about Neil Gaiman trying to be cool, failing a lot of the time. I'm just kidding. Let's talk about Sandman, the '80s. Neil Gaiman trying to be cool, darkness and the dorkness, Cold War doom, and the importance of multipolar dreams as opposed to just Western dreams and the fortunes of dreams generally. Um, yeah, so Sandman, there's kind of a complicated relationship, not complicated relationship, but like I spent a lot of time in the William Gibson world, in the cyberpunk world. Like, I used to do a lot more talking specifically about cyberpunk because the main thing that I do most of the time is make actually video games, and a lot of them have been particularly science fictional cyberpunk, which has a lot of overlap. Cyberpunk science fiction has a lot of overlap with the dark Neil Gaiman gothic fiction. I guess I don't know. He Neil doesn't call himself a sci-fi writer. I think he said, "I wish I could write sci-fi," but he doesn't. But there's a lot of overlap between Gibson fans, Neil Gaiman, William Gibson fans, Neil Gaiman fans, and that sort of group. Especially they were writing around the same time. Their heyday was the '80s, when the punk musical genre, punk aesthetics, goth aesthetics, and music, culture, art, style, clothing, the world, at least the Anglo world, the Western world, I would say, was in that phase. The rest of the world was in somewhere else, but the Gen Xers, who were whatever teenagers they were in the '80s, read a lot of Neil Gaiman. I would say many of them, the more ostracized or feeling ostracized, whether they were or not. Actually, the ones that were feeling um, outside, whether they were or not, were reading a lot of Gaiman, Gibson, especially the really nerdy ones, and that was kind of the target audience. I feel. Gibson is more for the computer techie nerds. The short story cyberpunk which was coined by Bruce Bethke, was another fiction writer, nerdy fiction writer in that time. Um, it was about a young white boy who is kind of like Bill and Ted. Dad is big business guy or some kind of military school. I'm gonna send you to military school if you don't straighten out, son. And it's kind of like this the kid like feels like his parents don't listen to him, feels like his parents don't understand him. Think of like Kevin McAllister in Home Alone, and Kevin McAllister in there's that music video where he's like rebelling against his parents. It was just like you know, and the cyberpunk kid learns how to use computers, hacks his dad's computer, takes over multiple military and aeronautical installations, and depletes his dad's bank account, like threatens his family, like he threatens his own parents with like financial and economic ruin, and police, law enforcement. He's like, I've hacked the computer codes of the police dispatch, and I've made you out to be a criminal, and so you have to do what I say, Dad. So it's just kind of like cyber empowered, angsty, upset teenagers spending a lot of time on computers, right? Rebelling against this society or their society or daddy, mommy, something. And I mean, sometimes there are legitimate things to rebel against, obviously, and legitimate problems in the society, but it's like the things that are problems for middle and upper middle class white boys and men, and some of them that are not, but especially those that have closer access to privileges, the problems that they think are the problems are not always the actual problems that need to be solved in the society. They're kind of like made up a lot of the time. Or they're not to say that they're not feeling those things. It doesn't invalidate what's happening inside the mind of, a 18-year-old with mommy and daddy having 3 houses and rich suburban parents. And not to say there's nothing bad happening in that world, and there's all kind of other problems with that reality, but the problems that are often like being had, they're not really economic problems. They're not really problems like I have 56 guitars, and because a lot of people that were cyberpunk fans and goth fans and really nerdy, now they have like really cushy jobs, right? They're like 50, 60 years old. They have 56 Les Paul and Gibson guitars, right, that they play their punk music on. I know these people because they're on the Gibson board. They have lots, or the gaming board. They have lots of access to a lot of wealth and capital because they work for the military and for the government when they became coders, like for Lockheed Martin or for the U.S. government at the high levels, right? When they became bankers and Wall Street traders. I mean, literally, like a lot of the people who were the people that were big fans, they entered into a huge job, and they were like upset about problems in the society. Reagan was bad in this time, but now they're incredibly educated, and they got into high level corporate lawyer, accounting, tech, programming jobs. They're like professional managerial class, the ones that still had money though in that time, marketers, etc. But they like still feel like a lot of things were missing. The things they did, I don't know what it is, but I didn't have as easy a life as my boomer parents sometimes. But it's like, there are things to be upset and there are things to be sad and mad about in the world. But a lot of the time, the things that like, for example, the main character, I'm already going hard on the other angle that I didn't really want to go on. Because there's lots of people, and I'm not saying like everybody who's a fan of Neil Gaiman or William Gibson, because obviously I'm a fan of William Gibson's writing. I'm a fan. I like both. I like American Gods, probably my favorite Gaiman, and the cyberpunk, all the Gibson stuff is like stuff that I spend a lot of time reading and rereading a lot of this stuff. So it's not like it's like well written, obviously, but like looking back at it, it's like, there are things that are it's a middle to upper middle class millionaire white man's perspective. I mean, that's just what it is, because that's who these people are who write these books, right? There's people who have millions of dollars and live in places like Vancouver and London and have beautiful careers. You can't really not have that perspective if you are a 60 to 7-year-old white man. That's just what it is. Which is like that's a human perspective. That's why I say it's like it's not invalid. It's not invalid. It's just like missing a lot of like things that are, more pertinent than whether the third timeshare that you own in California is going to maintain its property value. Who the fuck cares? Who cares if you like lost 3 of your Les Paul Gibsons? Does that really matter? Does it really matter? There's people that are like homeless all over the goddamn place, and they're dying from monkeypox, epsilon delta variant, plus polio and COVID, and the entire planet's on fire, especially your own backyard that you've neglected because you didn't listen to indigenous people. Who cares about, who cares about what metaphysical hypothetical problems you think you have as a multimillionaire white longtime coder, technologist, government, or corporate high paid person? Who cares? You should quit the Lockheed Martin. So anyway, that's like I guess I'm front loading this and I'm not reviewing the movie very much. I'm just saying exactly what I think too fast, but there is like they're like watching it and like thinking back. It's like it's kind of, I was talking to Holly about this. Like you have to kind of like put your mind into, you have to kind of block out the 2020s. Like if this was 2010, like there's lots of things. If this was 2010, Holly's like, if this was 2010, if this was 2005, this was 2000, right? And part of it is just like we're different people now. A lot of people are different people, but certainly like I'm a different person. It's kind of part of the thing of like decolonizing all the stormtrooper bullshit being raised in Western capitalist, racist, sexist culture, right? Is that when you start undoing that, you start looking back at the things that you used to think were like the best thing in the world, and you go like, I mean, it's not like it's bad. It's just like it's missing a lot of things. It's missing more things than you noticed when you were fully programmed by the Matrix. Is another way using another Western created media. And so like, and it's in the 2020s, right? It definitely is hitting different. Although I will say like on the plus side of the Sandman, they did like have a lot more, like it has been updated. Like at least Neil Gaiman did. Not Neil Gaiman, it's like the people who make the shows. He's not making the entire show. He wrote the comic books and stuff, and then he made lots of money selling lots of copies of his books and getting them made into lots of shows like Stardust, like American Gods, like Good Omens. I mean, this guy's got shows. This guy is doing very well. William Gibson, there's this thing between the Gibson board and the Gaiman board. A lot of people went back and forth. I mean, I'm not throwing shit at people specifically on either of these boards. I mean, it's just I was on these boards. I'm like throwing shit at myself. And lots of people that are supporters and longtime friends we've met through these places, and it just like the fans generally. But looking back and thinking about it, it's like there has always been this weird competition between them too. Like, will Neuromancer or the Sandman get made into movies first? And like William Gibson is losing at that game, so I'm sorry to Bill. He's like losing that game. He's only got Johnny Mnemonic. Amazon has bought the rights to the Peripheral and I think a couple other ones, but he's not doing as well. But you got to go to more parties, and I don't know, you got to get married to more 50-year-olds trying to be cool. Alternative musicians, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, but Amanda Palmer is I forget the status, but I think they were married for some point in time. Anyways, but like, it's like this I mean, it's a world that I know very well because it's like that's what a lot of Neofeud is like. The game that I made, right, is based on it's not really Neil Gaiman, but it's like alternative nerdy specifically cyberpunk culture. It's not just that, but it's also like 80s culture, 90s culture, but it's much more of a like the kind of literature that Gibson and Gaiman were writing, right? Which is like high concept. It's very dark and gritty and all this. That's one thing that they have in common too. There's lots of black jackets and people who look like flock of seagulls riding around and like self-insert characters, right? Like so, like the Sandman is Neil Gaiman. They chose the guy who looks exactly like him, who also kind of looks like Edward Cullen and almost played Edward Cullen in the Twilight Show. So there's the self-insert flock of seagulls. I'm about to sing. I'm about to sing about enjoying the silence with a lot of 80s guitars look that this guy has. That's what Neil Gaiman looks like. He basically still looks like it. Neil Gaiman also still goes. Every other day I see Neil Gaiman come up on my YouTube channel, and it's like, would you like to have a master class from that dude who got all of his 80s goth shit turned into movies and TV shows? I'm Neil Gaiman. Let me teach you how to write stories, and like, and then so I'm like, and he's still wearing this black leather jacket, and he still has the Cure hair. We also just watched the Purple Rain with Prince, and which actually I like that movie is actually I like that more than I thought it would. I don't know why I thought I wouldn't, but he looks like one of the. I mean, it's like it's the same hairstyle they had in the time. And he comes around with his black leather jacket. You know who else used to wear a lot of black leather jackets? Bruce Sterling, right? Because he's a 50, 60, 7-year-old guy still suffering post-traumatic I wasn't cool enough in high school disorder, right? And so then they spend that's the weird thing about people like these nerdy sci-fi and fantasy, urban fantasy writers, right? Especially the cyberpunk and the urban fantasy writers. They're like 60, 70-year-old rich nerds, right? And they're still upset that they were like not the coolest person in high school. But like it's not high school anymore, and nobody wants to win the cool competition. That's another problem, right? That's a problem. That's another Western dream problem. We're talking about this. Who cares? That's like when you say the word cool to like a lot of the Gen Z and younger than that now, they're like, what does that even mean? I'm just wearing whatever I'm wearing right now. I'm not what like if you talk to a 50 or 60-year-old well-positioned person, they still think about, a lot of them think about what is cool, what's in, right? It's like I want to have a shirt. Somebody said like the reason why polycules are in now is because they're not because they're cool. It's because nobody can afford any house with more than one room in it without 10 people living inside, and so everybody has to all. We're all just gonna be, and that's not the only reason why polycules are back in, but it's other things going on in the end of nuclear families, but it's simultaneously the end of cis heteronormative Western sexual and relationship and romantic norms, right? Which were not good, obviously. I talk about that all the time, but also the unaffordability of houses with only 2 people and 2 children living in a 3-bedroom, right? Which is that's not necessarily, not to say that people need to have like giant mansions, but like the affordability of space in which the inflation, the hyperinflation, really at this point, 23% is where it actually is at when you look at closely the food, and the food is some food products are up to a 100% inflation rate. Housing is inflating at a rate of 10 to 20% when you look closely right now in a lot of places, right? And it was already bad in the last 20 years. So like my point is that like it doesn't matter what kind of hairspray you're using. It doesn't matter what kind of leather jacket. Nobody's looking at the Gen Z and a lot of the younger millennials are not, and the ones that aren't well positioned are not looking at whether there's a Levi's on your black leather jacket, right? Gibson really cares about, I'm like dropping all of his shade right now. I'm so sorry to all people who like that guy, but he when I met him to interview him, it's like, he's kind of like, I'm just, and that's just him. I'm just saying that the generation, right, is like, he was concerned that we did not know, right, that he cared whether we knew what brand of pants he was wearing. And I didn't care. What the hell does it matter what brand of pants you're wearing, right? But the thing is, that's how the characters are in the books, right? I have, who cares what brand? Is it Levi's? Is it Gap? Is it a generic mainstream brand, or is it this chic European brand? Who cares? Nobody cares. The broke millennials and the even broker Gen Z want any pants, right? Cool is a luxury of the people who have access and privilege in the top 5 to 1% of the planet's population, who have so much colonial extracted wealth dumped into their first world that they can spend money on 100 pants a month, and then they can think and pick and choose, and they can spend 10 times as much to import German jeans from fucking Germany, right? And worry about what will give me the most social rewards for wearing this or that. But most of the world, and in fact the younger parts of the world, they just want any clothes or any food or any house, not the house that looks like a fucking chateau. They would like any house whatsoever. But that's not really a problem that you think about. See, like, I wasn't thinking about that problem when I was like younger and in college, because I didn't have the responsibility of paying for houses, jeans, and food, because I was a little brown person that was enculturated to be a white middle class person, or being told that you could aspire to be that. And then the noughties and the teens and financial collapse and ruin the last 20 years have said, no, you're never going to have that. Just like the rest of the millennials and Gen Z, you are perma-screwed. And so then it's like, so when you look back at what you were thinking, when I look back at what I was thinking when I was 22 or 18 or 16, aspiring to be a rock star, maybe not looking quite like Flock of Seagulls here, or leather jacket and and brand name jeans rock star, or Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. I was like listening to a lot of Smashing Pumpkins at the time. Being a musician or being a movie star, or whatever we thought, fancy game programmer, right? Whatever Western dreams that a lot of us had, right, as millennials, or or even the latest of the Gen X now, and the most low access to privilege people, right? Those are gone, and it's just there's a lot. It's like all of these aspirations have been replaced with a lot of rage for the most part, and partially in that being lied to, but also like, but then increasing, and it's part of why part of why we fell out of a lot of the groups is because like it becomes harder and harder to relate when you actually hit the economic reality of having to like pay for all your stuff, right? And then the world is not keeping up. The expectations for your economic access, your prosperity, your potential, your dreams are not being met by the reality of the United States in the 20-teens or the 2020s, despite your being more educated than the boomers and Gen X by far. Actually, you're still making 5 to 10 times. The average millennial is 10 times poorer than a boomer given at the same age and stage of life. So a 35-year-old millennial compared to a 35-year-old boomer, it would be about 10 times poorer and several times poorer than a Gen Xer, right? So the Gen Xer is like slightly less, but we're slightly less well off than the boomers. They basically had to get a college degree. Boomers could just walk out into the world. Well, being a white man, obviously, it's a white man. That's the complicating factor. Is it was a white man's American capitalist world, but you could walk out as a white man, get a painting job or just any job, no college diploma, and then have a Thunderbird, a lawn, 1.5 kids, a bouncy castle in the front, and live a happy life schmoozing in front of the water cooler and doing nothing for a living, basically, but being a white man. And that was really great for them. And then in the 80s, you could be a white man or a white woman, or in some cases, there's a little more access, but you had to get a college degree and become a systems analyst, right? And program Lockheed Martin aircraft, liquidate South America with high frequency trading algorithms in a fucking Wall Street building, do marketing for L'Oreal and for Prada, and then if you entered the neoliberal class, right, who are still like seeing themselves as rebellious teenagers despite working for giant corporations making high six figures, right, reading this the writers that I'm talking about, right, then you could get access to this better reality, and then you could go and fly on a jet every week, right? The people used to brag about this kind of stuff. Oh, I'm flying every other day. People that were real fans of writers like Gaiman. Oh yeah, I'm going here and I'm going there. I'm flying. I'm going to see the Louvre and then I'm going to fly there. How's your carbon budget? Nobody thought about that because that wasn't the problem. Was, there's like one too many Republicans. I mean, nobody likes Republicans, but the Republicans represent their daddy's party, right? The boomer that was better off than them because it was the white man's world. But now we're in the slightly more access for a handful of upper middle class white women mostly, who can all join the neoliberals and also be Democrats with Hillary and Bill, and make a lot of money and also do good in the world, and then still have a chip on their fucking shoulder and go, well, Ronald Reagan fucked it all up, and we have to just stop like the Republicans from winning, and that will solve all of our problems. How's it going in 2022 with Joseph Biden and the Democrats that have rolled back the abortion despite you controlling multiple portions of the Congress? The answer is, if you weren't looking from inside of the Western world, you would know the answer to this. But from inside, it looks like increasing confusion. It looks like sadness. It looks like it looks like a dying Western world, right? But from outside, it looks just like from outside, it's clear what was happening this entire time, which is that. And which is what still is happening, which is that the United States is liquefying all of its population, starting from the ground up, right? That's what the inflation is like, and I've talked about this a lot on previous streams, but I haven't talked about it. It's not the funnest thing to talk about, so I try not to talk about it too much. But the neoliberal era, the imperialist capitalist recuperation of itself, right, in the 1980s, right, and the branching out, right, and going, well, the Democrats, and the liberal, the left, whatever. These words almost mean nothing in places like the United States and in Canada and Europe, but the branching out, right, into going, well, we don't really need any actual socialists or communists anyway. They're all gone anyway. We wiped them out in the Cold War, and now, right, and the Soviet Union has fallen, and now it's the end of history, and now we have Western liberal capitalist democracy led by the rules-based order hegemon, the United States forever, right? And that was the 90s. I mean, that's why they love the 90s, and I talk about that's why Stranger Things loves its 80s and its 90s, and its heyday, because the U.S. is dying and the West is dying, from all the things I've just said, but it was, but the branching out, right, and the just going into the dream being altered, right, from the American dream being a white man with a Stepford wife and 1.5 kids and his Thunderbird, went from that to a possibly not white person, but mostly still white, stockbroker, marketer, programmer for the military or giant corporations, corporate lawyer, right, administrator, IT, or some tech, some office job, right, with a nice townhouse or a nice big apartment, maybe a partner, but both of you working, maybe kids, who cares, right? We'll see if we have kids. Otherwise, we'll just be like the couple in Idiocracy. So now we have the neoliberal American dream, which has a little more people get access to it. Maybe some LGBTQ plus people can get in there. Put a flag on our Lockheed Martin missiles and on our giant banks and corporate slogans, right? Like Burger King, gay meals. We'll sell some of those, but like the central problems of the imperialism, the colonialism, the capitalism, the military industrial complex, all that stuff is just left there to fester. And then you have so all the white guys are coming back and going, what the fuck, man? We're gonna make America great again. Because like, what are all these women and non-white people and gay people? The thing is like, and then they're coming back with its idpol, but the reality is just like most of the non-white people and the women and the LGBTQ plus community are still not doing very well, but their handful are being put in high places to make it seem like everything's fixed in the United States. But it wasn't, right? Anyways, I'm kind of like way off the topic, but I'm kind of talking around it, but like that's kind of like the context for which it's like it's weird to come back and look at. It's weird to come back and look at Sandman, which was written in the 80s, right? It was a graphic novel. It's not a comic book, okay? That's kiddie stuff. But we're all big grown-up people, right? We're all big grown-up people, right? With 25 fucking Gibson guitars and 2 timeshares, flying around, burning all the fossil fuel, right? And thinking we're very cool jet setters, right? And having high thread count bed sheets in the fucking Four Seasons, and bragging about what hotels we can go to, right? Bragging about what hotels we can go to every other day. Like that's a cool normal thing to do when the planet is on fire, right? And just guzzling all that jet fuel, right? People and all people are like going, oh, look at this, look at these celebrities on their private jets burning. You could use 1 million people could use steel straws and turn off their water and their lights on a regular basis, and that would do nothing compared to one celebrity's jet. But people, the jet setters of the neoliberal era, many of whom were fans of these kinds of books, loved bragging about that kind of shit. Look at how much we're consuming, but it's okay because, anyways. So I mean, but now it looks a little different, in the 2020s. When they're like, oh my God, we should have been paying attention to those indigenous peoples when we were too busy like pretending to care about them, right? By saying that Elizabeth Warren is 164th Cherokee. Maybe we should actually be listening. Oh my God, this capitalism is consuming even me now. It's eating us all, because the hyperinflation is not going away. Because the Build Back Better didn't happen, even with all these Democrats, and now they're all going to be gone, and there's like literal fights over whether there will be a United States going forward, which obviously there never should have been any United States. But it just anyways. So I'll see if I can get into the actual show though. But it does look back. It's like this doesn't like invalidate. And I want to speak from a place of honesty, which is that like all those things I said, like these are all things I thought maybe I would be a jet setter. Maybe I would fly around the world and like go to fancy museums every other day, right? Maybe I would go and have 25 guitars if I wanted. I have a few guitars, but most of them are used and old. I don't have more guitars than I need. And if you have 25, you have 50 guitars, that's maybe that's too many guitars, But I had it in my mind that I was going to be rich, famous, have a nice jet, maybe have a nice yacht. I mean, just imagine you're 17, 18. People who are 40 years old, 37 years old now. That's the most of the demographic of I think a lot of big demographic of the YouTube audiences. That's who it is. Watching pop cultural commentary videos, it's definitely a lot of who that is. If they're not all migrated to TikTok. Imagine when you were 16 and 15 and 17 and 18. What did you want? What did you want from your life, right? There was no left, really. There was no real left anything. There's not really much of it now for a lot of the... It's not like serious enough left, but there wasn't any of that kind of stuff. It was just like there was liberal and then there was conservative. That's basically what you had. Like the United States, like it did have much stronger capitalist, racist hegemony, right? You could say the R slur and it was totally fine. Everybody said that. You could say gay as an attack. You could say horrible things about misogynist stuff. Lots of stuff that we would be like everybody looking at your think. Just go back if you haven't, go back and look at what you wrote down and what you said if you have access to it in the 90s or the noughties. It was like the most terrible stuff. But with that came this. But everybody thought oh yeah, we're the progressive, we have human rights, and we're respecting people, and we have racial equality, and we have gender equality, despite all the stuff that that's why Keanu Reeves is the only uncanceled Hollywood star that's a 50-year-old white man, because he's like every picture he took he had his hands up. But most everybody else, right? What does that say about everybody else who was alive for the last 40 years, 50 years, right? All that's all kind of horrible stuff that we did and we said. It's like you can, and it's like, because that was the signal, the one-to-many broadcast of racist, sexist, capitalist United States, and the West to inside and to the world, the control of a handful of people in boardrooms in Los Angeles, New York City, and Washington D.C. was very solid, because there was TV, the internet was a twinkle in the eye of a handful of nerds and peoples with PhDs in computer science, and maybe some people had a foreign word for, and they had solid control over radio, over print, over everything, all the textbooks, all the schools, all the celebrity culture, all the hypersexualization, messed up body image control. Like everybody had to look like Twiggy, like a rail thin piece of like a literal twig, just like a 2-inch diameter waist with giant boobs. Remember this was the body norm. The body norms change back and forth what you have to fit, but all that kind of stuff, and hypersexualization in the video games and in the movies, which is why everybody's all mad about the video games and the movies not having enough sexy women. And that's like most of the market for the Western men's world. Is like Prey, that's what I was talking about last week. Prey has too many brown indigenous women unrealistically winning fights against predators, right? Why do people think that? That's not even true. Historically, I did a whole thread like recently about the historical reality of that. Actually, like there were lots of cultures that had women of a variety of body shapes and sizes and gender fluidity and gender equality, and the women often led in debased cultures, politically and militarily, and fought and won battles, right? And I have, But nobody knows that. Nobody thinks about that because the United States and the Western world is a cis heteronormative patriarchal capitalist shitscape calling itself some kind of gender, racial, and economic progressive light on the hill. And it has never been that. Whatever we, and I include myself in that, whatever we thought we were never that. What we as the stormtrooper of the world, right? Those were dreams, and the dreams of pursuing a great rich life, making millions of dollars, having multiple houses, owning big capitalist businesses, having yachts, personal ships and jets. Those were all terrible dreams to have. Those are horrible Western dreams to have, but we should feel silly and shameful for having them. Because that was a culture that didn't have in the long term. If everybody dreams those dreams, there will not be any dreams because there will not be any people because the planet will be dead. And that's 2022. That's where we're at now. Anyways, so it's kind of like weird but anyways, I'm kind of like a little bit off there, but like, you know. And you have to be able to admit that, although because it's like Imperials Anonymous, or you're never gonna be able to make any changes. But anyways, back to Sandman. I'm like way off the Sandman. Let's try to actually talk about the show a little bit. So in the Sandman, he is the king. So he's I almost entitled this thumbnail "Sad Boy Monarch," or just like Sandman the Sad Boy. Sandman, the sad white boy, right? But or sad monarch, because he is the king of dreams, right? And so in the world of Sandman, if you don't know, just for people might be like, I don't know anything about Sandman. Which again, I'm not saying like both Sandman and the Gaiman books and the Gibson books are well written, because if they weren't well written, I probably wouldn't have read any of them, right? But I'm gonna leave some corollary. I mean, it sounds really nice and it sounds really good and it's florid and pretty to read. Gibson is very good at his metaphors and his, he's very observant. There are many other things that there's, we'll get to the problems. But the Sandman in the books, in the graphic novels, that are not comic books. They're for big grown up white boys. I'm being facetious there. Anybody can read the Sandman books. But I know Neil Gaiman insisted on them being called graphic novels, right? He insisted on them being called graphic novels. At least William Gibson. Like obviously, I've been dunking. I'm not really dunking. I'm just talking about William Gibson. But William Gibson had the common decency to at least say, right? He was the guy who was writing at the same time. He was a bestseller. He won like the Triple Crown of science fiction awards in the 1980s. The Hugo, the Nebula, and the Hugo, the Nebula, and the other big science fiction award. But Gibson had the common decency to say, Neuromancer, which came out around the same time as American Gods and the Sandman, I think. It was in 1980s. Neuromancer is a young man's book, and I was very immature, which says how immature I was because I wrote this book when I was in my 30s. But Neil Gaiman is like, no, this is like for big adults. This is for grown alienated white men. That's who Sandman is for. It's not a comic book. It's for big boys with 50 fucking guitars. Anyways, I'm sorry if you have 50 guitars. I'm not saying that you don't have to have 50 guitars. I'm just saying sell 10 of your guitars and buy a house for some broke ass millennials living 10 to a house eating ramen for dinner every night. Anyways, so Sandman is a dude who Sandman is an American fantasy drama series based on the comic book of the name, written by Neil Gaiman and published by DC Comics. What year did it come out in? Sandman, like Neuromancer. The reason why I'm talking about this is like kind of like inside Silver Spook lore stuff, but technically, I tried to adapt Neuromancer to film once, and Sandman was another one that they were always thinking about. When are we going to get these movies made into film or into TV shows? Neuromancer still hasn't been made into a movie. It's gone through like 20 different directors. Chris Cunningham, Joseph Kahn, Vincenzo Natali. I can name all of them if I think a little bit harder. But Gaiman got his Sandman made. Anyways, Um, okay, so what year did the comic come out? I'm sorry, Neil. Wikipedia, which is the arbiter of all truth in all multiversal realities, has determined that it's a comic book. I'm so sorry that it's not a graphic novel, because that's what it says on Wikipedia. I'm joking, of course. Wikipedia doesn't admit that Hawaii had the world's first universal healthcare system because it's a racist white billionaire-owned entity that works for the U.S. empire. Anyway, so the comic book came out in the year 1989, and it went from 1989 to 96. It was the following vertical determined. So yeah, it was on the DC. It was in the DC world. I didn't realize this. Constantine, the movie with Keanu Reeves, actually comes from the Sandman world, if I'm not mistaken. I to be honest, like I didn't get super into those. My favorite of the game stuff was American Gods, probably. I like Good Omens. What is the legend of the Sandman? Okay, so now, but what I want to say is, so Sandman's character is here's a picture of the comics if you want to see that. Yeah. So Sandman in the center, right, is a character who is it's like an urban fantasy. It's really common nowadays, I suppose. But Sandman's main character is an urban fantasy version of Morpheus, or the King of Dreams. He's the god of, basically he's like the god of dreams and sleep, and it's in a world in which, you know, it's similar to American Gods, where basically like it's a world where there is God and there is the devil is there, Satan, hell is real, heaven is real, and then there's kings of dreams, and there's the Lord of Death, and all the endless is what they're called. And so it's like a world in which all these mythological, I get it was new in that time, so it was imaginative and creative in that time. Nowadays it's more common, but it was like the kind of one of the first times you had like these like basic concepts were like, and a lot of it is tied to the mythology and the stories and the cultures of the world. So like the Sandman had gone by other names, like Morpheus, King of Dreams. I forget all the other ones. Lucifer had gone by, you know, Satan had gone by, you know, the Morning Star, and gone by other names in different cultures. And but the entities are real, and they have like flesh manifestations in a 1980s, you know, Escape from New York 1980s London. It's like in an urban setting. They're just walking around and having interactions with people. So that's kind of like the conceit. I mean, it's more common nowadays, but that was kind of like what was happening, and that was what was new about it then. Holly read lots of these urban fantasy books. I can probably name more of them than I can. But so the Sandman character is brought early on in the show. He is brought to he is summoned, right? So basically, without, let me go back a little bit. So Sandman, without the Sandman's being in the world, right? So because he makes sure everybody is capable of sleeping at all. Like without his power in the world, there is no sleeping. So if you're having trouble sleeping, like you'll say you're taking, take 2 NyQuil, or do 25 Pilates, or do an hour of CrossFit so you can get to sleep. Without the Sandman, there is no sleeping, or you fall asleep and then you never wake up, right? So he allows people normal sleeping, and the capacity to dream, also with it, is one of his powers as the god of sleep and dreams. Not to be confused with the very scary guy from the Metallica song, but anyways, but the Sandman is capable of causing people to fall asleep, manipulating their dreams, giving them dreams, harvesting their dreams, and so there's a lot of levels to this, right? So when people, like, in the sense of people's dreams, people's hopes and dreams and aspirations in their waking life is kind of, it's implied that that's part of his power in the world, right? and he both draws from the dreams, but he also is, and he also draws power from the dreams, but he also kind of like enables them. So it's kind of like this. It's a kind of a. I haven't read so deep into it that I know exactly how this all works, and it kind of changes depending on the scene, because it's more metaphorical, and it's more philosophical in a certain way. But when Sandman is captured and imprisoned early on, so like Sandman, the guy who plays he's the Alien 3 doctor who hits on Ripley. I think he has sex with Ripley in Alien 3, and he also plays Tywin in Game of Thrones. Fucking Sandman captured by what is the guy's name? Roderick Burgess. Roderick Burgess. Yeah. So Sandman gets captured, right, in the show by this creepy dude, right? Roderick Burgess, and who is a magician who summons him with this, the blood of a squirrel and the poop of a frog and the breath of an infant and 3 chicken nuggets. I forget the exact witch's spell. I don't know them all, but he does the correct sequence of events, and he casts a spell that brings the Sandman into a bubble, into a prison for gods and mythological entities in his basement, basically. And this Roderick Burgess character says, "You will give me his son has died," right? And he wants his son back. And the Sandman, so this Roderick Burgess, the magician man, he did not want the king of sleep. He wanted the king of death. Right, he wanted the monarch, the god of death, to bring his dead son back. Right, he wanted the god. He either wanted to kill the god of death, imprison and force the god of death to undo the death of his son, right, or stop death generally, and make everyone immortal. Which would be interesting. But he doesn't get the god of death. Roderick Burgess gets the Sandman, the god of dreams and sleep. And so he says, well, can you get your brother here to bring can you get your brother Death here or your sister Death here to bring my son back? But the Sandman doesn't talk. And he says, can you give me something to bring my son back? Can you do some kind of magic to bring my son back? Sandman doesn't talk. He just sits there naked and emaciated, with pipe cleaner legs and twig arms. You gotta eat something, man. Maybe like a double cheeseburger. If you're vegan, have a bean wrap or something. Have some quinoa. Eat something. Anyways, those shade. If you want to look like that, that's your body type. But I'm just saying, the guy he does look like he could use a little bit of food. I don't know. Maybe that's just what his body does. But he looks quite like he could be a skeleton decoration when Halloween comes out. I think he can. Anyways, I'm not, but importantly, he doesn't talk. He just sits there like this, and he says, "You are the god of dreams," right? Because you see it before that, and the Sandman has a very cool intro sequence where the Sandman, no, I don't need the guitar tabs for fucking Metallica's song. Even though I looked up Master of Puppets, I understand why the Google algorithm is suggesting this to me. I want the Sandman intro sequence from the Flicks of Net. Anyways, in the intro sequence, you see that Sandman is really helping the world exist at all, because people sleep, dream, wake up. It helps humanity to keep going on, right? Because otherwise, part of it is without the dreams, they kind of fall into purposelessness, hopelessness, nothingness, and also mass orgies, and then death happens. I'm not gonna give too much more. That happens it's like, what the fuck? Without sleep and dreams, everybody all has sex with each other, and then gets really mad at each other and kills each other. That's anyways. But the point is that you kind of need sleep. People do need sleep, and they do need dreams to exist. And Sandman makes all these things happen, and he can cause dreams to come true, and he can make he can make new dreams and harvest them and recombine them into new things in his his alternate universe, in the, not the underside, but in his ultra dimensional kingdom that he rules from. A lot of this is very metaphorical. Just, it's not really to be taken too literally. It's not science fiction. but he's like, so he has all these powers. He does have lots of powers. Like he can create entire palaces and worlds like from thin air when he has his powers, right? And he could have these powers, right? But when the Roderick Burgess guy comes in, he's like, hey, so give me my dead son back. Nothing. Can you bring death here so that I can make death give me my dead son back? I don't really want you. Can I trade you for death? Nothing. Can you give me something? Can you make me immortal, wealthy, powerful, famous, something? And Sandman is he's just sitting there. He's like silent, and he's just silent. And so you know, so he's a real sad boy. He's a real problem communicating. You know, he's given a cold shoulder for like a century. I mean, literally, he just sits there, and they keep asking him. And he's imprisoned, and they've taken his clothes, they've taken his precious ruby that makes dreams come true, the sand that does sand magic, right? And his mask that lets him see things across the world and people that are sleeping. He can see if you're sleeping, he can see exactly where you are and what's happening, and he can see and manipulate your dreams, right? But they've taken all of his precious objects, they've taken his clothes. And now they make him sit naked in this box, in this little jar. And they say, if you just give us something, we'll let you back. And even at a certain point, there's the son of the Roderick Burgess who hates his father. And he says, I'm sorry that my dad put you here. Would you like to be released? If you only promise not to hurt me and my friend, we will release you. I will release you. All you got to do is promise. And the thing is, like, Sandman could have even just lied and just, yeah, I won't hurt you, and then hurt him later. Because the son of the Burgess magician was willing to let him go. So anyway, this is one of the parts where I'm like, you know, the books read and sound good, but in terms of like actual writing, actually it made me feel better about all my own writing. I'm like, this plot hole is so fucking massive, though. It's like, dude, if you just said anything, you know, because he sits there for a century. People are offering to let him free, to set him free. And, I mean, this is just a quibble that I have. Like, watching it, like, this doesn't make any fucking sense, man. You just sit in, I mean, unless, I don't see it. I see, what I see is a giant, massive fucking plot hole in one of the most famous and well-loved books and shows of all time now. And I'm like, you know, because people often say, like, you know, just, when you feel bad, just as a pro tip for writers, when you feel bad that you're not successful enough and maybe you need to be a better writer or better actor or better whatever, but especially better writer, better content creator, better movie maker, better game maker. Just remember, Twilight is one of the best-selling books of all time, and it's absolute garbage. Cruella de Vil got made into a movie and had millions of dollars of budget, and I don't know what scribble accidentally got written down by some handful of monkeys that made that script. And also, Sandman is a book where the guy sits there, could be let free at any moment, refuses to say anything, right? Just like he's like throwing a century tantrum, basically. And then at the end of the century, somebody accidentally breaks the protective circle, the magic circle that keeps him contained, and then he breaks out. And then he's so upset, and he's like, you tortured me for a century. You didn't let me out. Look what has happened to humanity. And he says it more. He says it more like the Mr. Quiet Voice man in Jupiter Ascending, or Edward Cullen. He's very like Neil Gaiman fantasy Edward Cullen. He's like the Twilight vampire. You know, the actor who plays the Sandman was rivaling Robert Pattinson to play Edward Cullen from Twilight, and he looks a lot like him, right? And he also looks like Neil Gaiman, because Neil Gaiman is an old creepy vampire. Just kidding, he's not a vampire. He's just some random millionaire white guy. Anyways, so this guy though, he comes out and he's like, he gets out, he breaks out finally, right? And then he's like so mad. He's so mad. This whole time he's like, I wanted to get out. I really, really wanted to get out. And you tortured me for a century. You horrible humans. And look what you've done. Look what you've done. The world is falling apart. Because part of it is in the century from like the early 20th century until the 2020s or whatever it's set in, right? It's like almost 100 years basically passes from the, and wars have broken out. Things have gotten bad. It's the 1980s. There's rats and shit in the sewers, right? The economy is doing badly. That's why everybody was sad in the 80s, because white dudes couldn't get jobs as easy as their mommy and daddy. Oh my God, everything's bad, and like Reagan is here. There's trash in the streets of New York City. Go watch The Joker again and think about what that was trying to say about the 80s. And no, it's not to say that it was good, right? But it's like, oh my God, there's nuclear war because Russia and the United States could shoot nukes at each other, and that's making me sad. Oh my God. But the point is, like, because Dream wasn't there, that's why things have gotten worse for the world. In the time it was written, it was talking about the 1980s. Now it's talking about things have gotten worse, and that's why 2020 suck. And that's why people are sad and poor and I don't know, whatever other problems people have. Mostly just sad. That's why you don't have 20 guitars. You only have 15. It's because I was locked in the and you see, anyways. But the point is, like, he's like so upset. He's like really mad, and he puts someone permanently to sleep. He says, "Well, I'll torture you now. You torture me, I'll torture you." And look what you've done. You've broken the world because I was trapped in this fucking box. I care so much about humanity in the world. I just want to save the world. But you trapped me in this fucking box. And I'm like, motherfucker, you could have just said, I won't hurt you. And then you could have gotten let the fuck out of the box. You know? And so he's like mad at the people when he has kept himself locked up by basically, you know, going to his room, but just like not talking for an entire century. In like, or not saying anything. He doesn't say anything, and it's my point is he could have been let out, but he's like self-inflicting, and then that's a giant fucking plot hole. So anyway, I'm just saying that's one of a few, but that's the most glaring one. So anyway, but that, you know, quibbles with that aside, which is fine. I mean, things have holes. My point is like things have holes in it, and then, like, the story is not bad because of that. You know, it's like it's still, you know. Millions and millions and millions of people have read these books, have watched this show now, and lots of people like it, right? I'm just saying, when some, and you know, actually this comes back to Prey though. Actually, when people come and say, for example, I mean, I'm gonna try to keep this brief, but when people say Prey, which is a Predator movie, right, that I talked about last week, which is stars an indigenous woman who defeats the Predator, right? And then all these toxic, crappy dudes, right, are like, that's not realistic, right? They're all like the rise of lonely single men. Speaking of that, did you know that 62% of people who use dating apps are men, and that dating opportunities for heterosexual men are diminishing as healthy relationship standards change? Speaking of sad boys, but anyways, try having health. Try treating people like equals. Actually, heterosexual straight men. And maybe you'll have some better luck instead of being an abuser and thinking that's normal in the world. Anyways, I mean that is a truth about the, you know, the white man party can't deal with. But going back to Predator, right? So people have been upset that that Prey, right, stars an indigenous woman. And what are they getting upset about, though? I'm trying to find that. Where's that tweet where the dudes are getting all up mad about this? I can't remember. Right? Yeah. So Prey, yeah. There's a Geeks and Gamers, and not just them, quartering all your favorite white man YouTube personalities, right? Commenting on movies, said that Prey is terrible because it's inconsistent, right? Right? It has no logic to it. It's illogical. It's the storytelling is nonsensical. It's inconsistent, right? There's no logical. It's a logical consistency. Prey is one of the dumbest films created. Is what these people are saying, and this is geeksandgamers.com. Very popular. You know, all the Gamergate. You know, all the fandom menace. All the people that were mad that there were black and brown people and women in the Star Wars, and they're mad that they can't jerk off to She-Ra anymore. You know, which is the majority of the people who consume media in the Western world, actually. Did you know that? It's actually otherwise the giant game companies wouldn't keep making fucking the world's largest best-selling games, like these AAA shooters and shit, and then catering to these people's interests. and rebranding German Nazis as German combatants to appease racist white men who play video games and watch action movies. Prey is one of the dumbest films ever created. There's no logical. Anyway, so my point is that the complaints about the logic and the inconsistencies, right, and the nonsensicalness, right? How many times did they use the word nonsense? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nonsensical, illogical, right? Women, and the argument is this Comanche woman, a woman, period. And they also use this terrible slur, the S word, for indigenous women. Don't use that word. And he says, the author said, I'm not taking it back because that's just a word that some people used in the 1700s, and so it's a word in the English language. So I'm going to use it, just like the N word. I assume this person would say, I'm going to use the N word with the hard R in my review of Harder They Fall, which is a terrible cowboy movie. It's a great cowboy movie. You should go watch Harder They Fall. It's mostly black cowboys. I'm going to use the N word because that word was used in the history, and that's an English word, and I'm going to use it all over my review. But anyways, it's cheap. Anyway, this person saying it's cheap, nonsensical, horrific. It's dialogue. The worst issue is the dialogue. It's illogical. It's the Predator has strength far beyond this petite and undefined woman. Anyway, she is too small and too weak. She could never defeat a Predator. This is illogical. Women can't be fighters. Women can't be warriors. Only men who look like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Conan the Barbarian can be warriors. Right? And everything is illogical. And so I made this whole fucking thread about why, number one, that's false. Number two, why don't you come for Chris Hemsworth and Captain America, right? When they have illogical, number one, what are you not upset that there's no such thing as freaking predators and aliens coming down from outer space? Number two, you cannot hold a Gatling gun that didn't exist and fire it like Jesse Ventura does in Predator 1. That's nonsensical. Nobody walks around with a freaking anti-aircraft gun. Scientifically, I think it's like that. You can't. You would have like 3 seconds of ammo if you were to fire one of those, right? I love that gun. Fucking Snoop Dogg uses it in that movie. I was gonna almost do a review of Day Shift, which is a vampire movie. Until we get Blade, which is a movie about killing the shit out of some rich white people, also known as vampires, by Wesley Snipes in the 90s. Day Shift is the one that is gonna hold me over to then, where fucking Snoop Dogg has an it's not logical and sensical. It's a made up movie, fictional gun called Big Bertha, and it fires fucking 2,000 rounds per second, and it wipes out hordes of rich white landlords, capitalists, and bosses, also known as vampires, who are mostly those people in this movie, and disproportionately European colonizers, like the Spanish horrible real estate agent in purple at the bottom there, the conquistador of Los Angeles. And watch Day Shift. This movie is much better than Sandman. Big Bird, and the gun is not realistic. You can't walk around. I mean, he runs out of, it's actually more realistic because he runs out of ammo after about 20 seconds of shooting. But that's not, nobody does that. But it's a fucking movie about running around slaying vampires who run 200 miles an hour. That's not. Anyways, vampires aren't real. What I'm not, and normal content consumers are not upset that they're not, that the movie is made about not real things like vampires. Anyways, right? But I'm sure if that person was reviewing this movie, they'd be like, this movie is illogical because, vampires can't walk during the day and a bunch of other little quibbles, right? This is what happens when bigots and shitty small Westerners don't like, especially white dudes. This is what they hate about Riddick, right? It's not realistic. Vin Diesel's a criminal. It had lots of plot holes. Fucking all comic book movies, all action movies are fucking made up bullshit, man. Come on. The U.S. military saving anyone, Captain Star-Spangled Underpants, this is a complete lie. They've destroyed millions of people and billions of people impoverished across the world. everything about Hollywood is bullshit. But white dudes only get mad about the bullshit parts when it's a woman or a non-white person, and especially a non-white woman in the protagonist role. You notice that? Then all the logic, all the nonsense and illogicalness and the inconsistency problems are brought out. Fucking everything about all the Avengers movies is bullshit, man. Come on, there's more bullshit in those movies than at least this movie is. That's why I like this movie, and I like all the ones I talk about and Prey, because yeah, everything it's a Hollywood fucking movie, dude. But it's like, but the narrative that it's saying, which is that like there's great amounts of colonization that have slaughtered and genocided people in the United States and all around the world, and then fighting back is justified, and the people that are fighting back are the people that are justified in doing that. I mean, that the overarching narrative of the bullshit Hollywood movie and the political valence of it is right, whereas fucking billionaire philanthropist Armstead Playboy making fucking missiles for Lockheed Martin, that's what Iron Man does, and the U.S. military. It's bullshit that has a net negative impact. That's the whole point of my entire channel nowadays. But anyways, I was gonna do an entire movie about Day Shift, which does star Snoop Dogg. Also, it has fucking Tupac is in this movie. I mean, he doesn't come back, but his music is in this movie. So I was already like, there's something based about this movie already, because you have actual like black revolutionary type folks showing up just randomly in the music. Yeah, like the OG Ice-T. I'm not as big on he's making too many cop movies nowadays, but Day Shift, if you want to watch something, I'm like way off of the track, but I don't know if I'm gonna remember to give it a shot. Day Shift has no propaganda. There are literally no cops in it. The main character is a working class black pool cleaner who is actually cleaning Los Angeles of real estate agents, capitalists, and landlords. It's almost like Vampire Star. It's like Sorry to Bother You with vampires almost. It's not quite as base as Boots Riley's shit, but a black communist movie. But it's like as nearly there, and it's got fucking vampires and way more action in it. So, but it's like the main character is a working class black guy who is like not making enough money to pay for his expensive kid's school because all the public schools are falling apart in Los Angeles, and he can't afford his healthcare for his family, and so he happens to be a vampire hunter for a living. But he's like doing like hard job. But it's almost like the vampire hunter is a metaphor for the hard jobs of being a janitor, a pool cleaner, a restaurant clerk. He has his other like Eastern European buddies who are like sound system installers. They're just like blue collar people. But it's almost like the vampire hunting is a metaphor for the drudgery and the difficulty and the thanklessness and the danger of often blue collar, actual like tough working class jobs that are not paying very well. And then James Franco's brother is playing the cushy office job white dude who like is like making a bigger salary than everybody beneath him, trying to climb the rat race ladder, and but then has to like learn that actually like you can learn things actually doing real work and that does in the field. Not to say that all office work is nonsense, but I mean there's a certain bullshit job, just bean counting bullshit that he's doing. He's an accountant, so. Anyways, and so the rest of the movie, I mean, it's all bullshit. Just like Sandman, just like Marvel, just like every Hollywood everything. It's all just some made up crap, and none of this stuff is real. But in this one, it's like the working class people. Oh, he doesn't. Not Wesley Snipes. Jamie Foxx's character. He's like, if he goes to the non-union place, he's like, not. It's actually saying something very important. He's like, I got kicked out of the union, but I can't get the money for this. I gotta come to you. Well, if it's not union, I'm gonna give you only 1/5 of what you need. And it's like, I can't afford anything with that. So it's like, in order to make enough money to have a dignified wage, he has to join a union. It's like, I mean, it's like, and it's not, and it's not a cop union. There's fucking no cops. I was thinking about why we just watched Predator 2 with Danny Glover doing, he's a cop. Fucking everyone's a cop. Bill Paxton's a cop. It's an action movie in Los Angeles with like a majority non-white cast that is like pro-union, anti-landlord, anti-capitalist. All the horrible people are like literal fucking Spanish conquistador, old blood colonizers that are overcharging everybody for their rents that they can't afford in California, and they're all the vampires getting cleaned up by Snoop Dogg, fucking smoking a blunt, firing a anti-aircraft Gatling gun, Jamie Foxx, anyway, so way more based than most things I'm seeing nowadays. Also watch Harder They Fall. It's all black cowboy movie. Also, Snoop Dogg is a cowboy. He's a black cowboy. That's the truth. John Wayne and Clint Eastwood is the bullshit. Most cowboys were not white, racist pieces of shit like Clint Eastwood and John Wayne. That was American white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal, Cold War, mid-20th century U.S. empire trying to make itself look good and get rid of the unions and the racial equality and the gender equality and everything else, and pretend like it's not a bunch of colonizers, right? And so, anyway, so black cowboy movies and Snoop Dogg, being a black cowboy, is about undoing the bullshit. Actually, that's another piece of like that. It's in a movie that's full of action movie bullshit. That's one of the actual important real world bullshit being undone by having Snoop Dogg be a cowboy, along with everybody in The Harder They Fall, which also has the Sorry to Bother You protagonist is also in there, by the way. Yeah, The Harder They Fall is a movie with all these people. And anyways, I don't know if I'm gonna have time to do videos on all of these. There's so many movies to do videos on all of them, so I'm just gonna give this one a shout out though. Anyways, so that was my point though. Is that there are plot holes and wrong stuff and inconsistencies, incorrectness in everything. I mean, I include my own stuff. I know there's inconsistencies in Neofeud and my other games. And yes. Hey everybody who play decolonators. Everybody's really mad at decolonators. I think that cis white gamer dudes are just really mad when there are non-white women from the global south or indigenous women wearing green. They just get really mad at the green. They're all mad about the She-Hulk too, and now they're mad about decolonators. They're mad about fucking indigenous women wearing green in Prey. I mean, well, the green is predator blood, but not everybody has access to predator blood. If the predator showed up in Vietnam, I'm sure that Luna Oi and the Vietnamese women would kick their ass and then put predator blood on their fucking face. But instead, they just use green shirts and communists. Anyways, many gamer dudes were upset that the character called Tina Thatcher. I know I talk about this a lot, but including Vosh and all of his fans, right, and people like that, and all these chuds, they were really mad that the Vietnamese character is fighting a character that they thought was Margaret Thatcher, and they said Margaret Thatcher was never the Queen of England, and this is ahistorical revisionism, right? Because the Vietnamese communist woman kicking America's capitalist invading butt in the Vietnam War, right, to prevent the spread of communism. It does. I mean, but and I point out, yeah, no shit. That's why the tank. But there is some historical accuracy. The tank that is being used in the game, right, when the Luna Oi character is like, I will be back to kick your colonizer ass with my tank. It is a PT-76 Soviet tank that the Vietnamese military did use, right? But the difference is the fucking tank doesn't go 200 miles an hour, fire at random directions and random angles, and then blow up half the army. There's lots of stuff. This is a fucking game. It's Hollywood bullshit, man. This is just the story. But there's other things happening that I'm trying to the background stuff. In 1965, the United States invaded Vietnam, committed genocide, killed millions of people to prevent the spread of communism, right? The thing that everybody wants. You want healthcare in your housing, all that kind of stuff? Or do you not? That's what America went to fucking kill the entire country on, and re-enslave them and recolonize them. That's what America's still doing all over the world. That's what it's trying to do to China, failing. But in the Western world, nobody complains about this stuff, right? Nobody. I mean, how many people got mad when Contra dudes were shooting little pellets that move at 15 miles per hour, in that video game? How many people got mad when Captain America doesn't have a clear explanation for, why he can lift these, why he doesn't get smashed to pieces when he's hit by Thor, with this particular hammer at this trajectory? It's not all science. This is just comic book bullshit, man. Nobody questions the logic and the consistency when it's a white dude doing bullshit. It's when a non-white woman or non-white people or women generally do action movie bullshit that they say that's bullshit. But the thing is, it's always bullshit, man. Everybody knows that. Come on. It's because you're a racist, sexist piece of garbage. That's why. But anyways, I think I've made that point. So that's why like all the white gamer dudes who have the big YouTube channels really hate me now, and they hate Luna, and they don't follow my streams anymore, is because they can't handle it, and that's too bad. They can't handle reality, they can't handle the truth, which is that. Anyways, I do want to quickly say though, I said this, but like in the actual history, Hollywood aside, and games and entertainments aside, there is a history of women being actual fighters. Just a quick shout out to all the indigenous women of the world. In Hawaii, action fans attack prey as unrealistic for having women warriors. Consider that women fought on the front lines of indigenous non-patriarchal cultures like Hawaii. The white man's world has fought to erase this from history, like our own languages. So this is a actual scene in Hawaii, which shows the women. It was, of course, it's a painting of what an event that happened by Hawaiians, right? That has been removed from history by the Western white man's world. Kukalinoko and was one of these great women leaders, and other women who fought on the front line of battles in defense of sovereign Hawaii. Women in Hawaii were consistently in what the West would consider male professions, including governing, political, economic, and other leadership roles. Women were routinely in positions of power, when the West considered those only male. In fact, the West considered women property for most of its existence. It's barely been a century since women were no longer property of men in the United States. As a matter of fact, the children also were considered property of men. White men could choose to kill their own children. In fact, and it was legally. Speaking of abortion, it was legal for men to murder their own children with no legal repercussions. In fact, because they were all property, children and women, property. They attempted to bury the fact. So, anyways, where indigenous, that was none of those things would be acceptable in Native Hawaiian culture. In Vietnam, 2 indigenous warrior sisters rose up against an oppressive invader, fighting personally against their army. They united 15 plus ethnic minorities in revolution, and this came to be known as the Viet people. Vietnam defeated colonizers like the U.S., French, with women fighters. So, importantly, the U.S. did not have women fighters. During the oppressive rule of Su Ding in 40 A.D., 2 warrior sisters, Trung Truc and Trung Ni. This is an image. You can watch. Luna has an entire video about called the badass women of Vietnam, who led the battle. They led into battle. They founded the entire country of Vietnam. And they didn't just like lead into battle. They fought in the battle. And many of them died in the battles. Right? The revolution of the Trung sisters unit. There was actually a Vietnamese lesbian couple later that were the most important leaders of their time. So this is not like one time there was women leaders. This happened all the time. They're political and military leaders. The revolution of the Trung sisters united 15 plus ethnic minorities in the region. Anyways, I already kind of said that. And that video has countless of these figures, and not just in the ancient times. In the fight for communism, there were countless important women figures that led the struggles, including choosing to get themselves imprisoned and killed. And one of them was set to be executed, and the executioner shot and chopped her, and she kept laughing despite bleeding everywhere, half executed. And she was like a rallying point for the liberation of Vietnam. Anyway, there are countless of these figures throughout history. That's part of why I made Decolonators. In actual indigenous, non-fucked up, colonial, capitalist, patriarchal civilizations, which often they come together. The actual liberators are usually, a lot of times, are women political leaders and fighters who lead the charges. In 1965, the U.S. attempted to prevent the spread of communism, resubjugate people. Hundreds of thousands were killed. But the Vietnamese, including women fighters, where the men didn't, defeated the men-only U.S. military. Vietnam had 1,000 less. Vietnam today has 1,000 times less homelessness than the United States, has universal health care, unlike the United States, has abortion, unlike the United States at a federal level, LGBTQ plus rights. The United States is stomping on them. I don't know if you've noticed that. Blaming monkeypox on, I don't know if you noticed that. Even the Democrats who are in power destroying LGBTQ plus rights. 500 times less COVID deaths Vietnam has today. So that's what happens when you actually know history and you don't watch white dudes Hollywood movies like John Wayne, right? Where these cis white men are gonna fucking liberate you. They're never gonna liberate anything. They can't even liberate themselves from anything. Custer was knocked from his horse by Buffalo Calf Road woman. The U.S. wants to forget that its genocidal, thieving settler men never defeated the indigenous people, and a woman beat their great white man commander. Custer was the leader of the American military, and he got his ass beat by a woman of indigenous heritage. So that's, but we don't want to remember that. Hollywood doesn't make movies about that. They make movies about John Wayne and Clint Eastwood, white men saving the world with their 6-shooter. Complete falsehoods. But that's the Hollywood action movie bullshit that comes into real world bullshit that has a real impact. Real world violence is not very entertaining. That's the thing that people, that's a quibble that, like, anyways, that's a whole nother topic. But the U.S. fought natives like it fought Vietnam, also to stop the spread of communism, because guess what? Indigenous people, go read the the Red Deal and follow the Red Nation, right? This is the actual Department of Indian Affairs said, unless some system is marked out by which there shall be a separate allotment of land to each individual, you will look in vain for any general casting off of quote-unquote savagism. Common property and civilization. Civilization meant capitalism to the United States federal government and the entire Western world. Civilization and capitalism were synonymous. Common property and civilization, capitalism, cannot coexist. At the foundation of the whole social system is individuality of property. It is perhaps 9 times out of 10 the stimulus that manhood first feels. It has produced the energy, industry, and the enterprise that distinguish the civilized world. So anyways, my point is, if what you want is economic equality, access to your basic needs, your healthcare, your housing, your food, your basic needs being met, an end to the capitalist system, you cannot do that without supporting and the support of indigenous peoples of the world who still hold some, what I call, semblance of what is the healed human way of existing in the world, right? Because that is historically what the U.S. has always done, is exterminate indigeneity, gender equality, and communism or non-capitalism, which all come together everywhere it has ever been. The Kandake of Africa were political and military leaders who also defended their nations, battling toe-to-toe with the Greeks and the Romans, defeating both would-be colonizers. The name Candace is Romanized name for the women warriors they met on the field. There's a movie that actually just came out. I'm not sure, but what is it? Hasn't come out yet. Queen, what is it called? The Queen King? Queen. Oh, Woman King. That's what it is, yeah. It has Viola Davis. There's a movie coming out soon. It's called The Woman King, which I believe, I'm not sure, but it looks like it may be about one of the Kandake. She is starring Viola Davis. The Woman King is a reign, because the Kandake were rulers who were equal to, if not above, their partners in the history of Africa, for thousands of years, actually. And this might be, I don't know enough about it to say this, but I believe that she may be playing one of the Kandake. I'm not sure, but it's a similar. It seems to be similar from what I've read about it. But the Kandake actually defeated, and they were not just rulers, right? Like in the Western world. I have a video about Wonder Woman that talks about this as well. They fought on the front lines of the struggles, right? The name Candace is the Romanized word for the women warriors that they met on the field and then kicked their ass. And when I say met on the field, they were the generals, and then they fought in the battles. How many battles has Mr. Biden fought? And not just historically, like now. John McCain was in some wars and he got his ass kicked by Vietnamese women too. John McCain, who died, rest in hell. He got himself shot out of the sky after, ruthlessly bombing with overmatched technology countless villages, and he smiled and cackled as he set Asian people on fire in their huts and little children's schools on fire and blowing them up. And then he got his ass shot out of the sky, and America lost the Vietnam War, a capitalist empire trying to stop communism, right? But other than that, he didn't fight toe to toe with any Vietnamese people. He would have got his ass kicked. because he's a spoiled little white boy. That's who fights America's wars. Fascists who like to shoot from far away, and then underpaid, broke brown and black people who can't afford their health care and housing, and they're sick of being broke into ghetto. And the U.S. military recruiter comes and they recruit them from the Army, the Air Force, the National Guard, the Marines, and the Navy. And so half of the U.S. military is fascist white men, and the other half is broke ass, underpaid black and brown people who don't want to fucking be there shooting their own people out there. And so the people who command the U.S. and the Western militaries, including Britain, including France, are rich white guys who are never on the front lines. The generals, their commanders, the British officers, the family, they all have to serve in the Royal British Navy from far, far, far back, not in harm's way. The West has never had military command that hasn't been oligarchic by a handful of wealthy cowards who brainwash all their people into believing that they're fighting for some great cause or on fear of death. There has never been a Western world that has they have been run by oligarchs, even in the Greek and Roman times. And they bury that fact very deeply, but it's always been the case. Like there were speculative burning in the same way that there are corporations making boatloads of money as California was set on wildfire, and the electric companies let millions of people go into blackouts, making millions speculating on the mass loss of power. Rome had speculators that let their entire cities burn and made a lot of money doing that. This is like old shit. And the West is a nations of white man cowards who have never been commanded, never been governed by actual people who care about their own countries and peoples. They've always been governed by people like Joseph Biden, Donald J. Trump, Mr. Clinton, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, and everyone else. They're all in the same class. They never fight the actual wars. They have poor and disproportionately non-white people fight the rich man's wars. But in Africa, they had the people who had led were women who had to fight on the fucking front line. In Vietnam, the people that led were fighting on the front line. They're not just sitting back making money from everyone dying. Now, that's a major part of what makes you an actual civilization and not just a barbarous shitscape. Anyways, so Candace is the Romanized name for the woman warriors that kicked all of the great fathers of civilization, the Greeks and the Romans, asses. The Kendake were political and military leaders in Kush, Ethiopia, also known as Ethiopia, who fought on the front lines of battle in defense of their people. The Kendake pushed back Alexander the Great. I would argue he was never great. He lied about Xerxes and made up a racist bullshit about Afro and Asiatic cultures, saying they were degenerate hordes of fallen gay people, and we have to kill them all. That's who Alexander was. He was a terrible person. And the United States continues to use yellow peril and black savage barbarism to justify their continued slaughter. Alexander was a horrible person, and he got his ass kicked by black women. So Kendake pushed Alexander back using brilliant military tactics, defeated the Roman invaders, forcing them to sign a peace treaty. The name Candace is what the Romans knew these warrior women as because they met Kendake on the battlefield. Western white man politicians, generals, and other leaders never go to the front line of battles, unlike in these indigenous cultures. Neither do the wealthy oligarchs that pay them. So anyway, this is like, you have to look concretely at not what the country calls itself. The Socialist Party, the Communist Party of Canada, that obviously wasn't communist enough to not mistreat women and have a unjust hierarchy internally, despite being a club for musty old white guys sitting around abusing women in the Communist Party of Canada. You can call yourself the socialist, the green, the communist, this, the worker co-op of that. What matters is like the concrete empirical reality on the ground. And that's not what the West has ever had. And everywhere that it has it, it does its best to exterminate that. Like black and brown actual decolonial resistances to this day. The way the indigenous people, that's why we're still being stomped in Hawaii from having having again our socialist, indigenous socialist Hawaii. Because that's not what they're about. They're about a handful of powerful dickheads and cowards making all the money and everyone else being brainwashed clowns fighting their ridiculous wars. And then making movies about how great they are, like Marvel movies. and Captain Star Spangled Underpants. Fighting wasn't always guns and swords, of course. Emma Kaleleo Nalani fought for the world's first universal healthcare system in 1859 in Hawaii. U.S. invasion banned our language, restricted women and our healthcare after illegally occupying us. Anyways, so I'm like way off of my topic right now. It's 12:19. I gotta get back. But importantly, number one, I wanted to shout out all those movies. I wanted to redo that Prey thing. Why am I bringing this all up? Because Prey was reviewed as being inconsistent and illogical, and not because she is a woman and is not big enough to defeat a predator. Number one, she doesn't arm wrestle the predator to death, right? So this is nonsense. This is one of the major lies of the Western world. It's like being a big bloated dude or being a man, period, gives you somehow, she does Naru in this movie Prey does not defeat the predator by arm wrestling or having a punching match. That's not how actual fighting actually works. But that's one of the lies about what actual violence and actual wars are actually like. It's thinking and outsmarting and out observing and understanding the environment, which is actually how Arnold. It's like by your own. But Arnold doesn't wrestle. The predator can lift fucking 3-ton bears into the air. Arnold does not beat the predator by out muscling the predator. That's another thing that people who are ostensible hardcore gamers and hardcore action movie lovers, right? Like these people, these white dude fucking geek and gamer clowns, and most of the game and media commentary actually in the YouTube and other platforms like that, the biggest ones anyway. Right, they're all about logical consistency, but the reality is a predator. Arnold defeats the predator, by using Vietnamese tactics. Actually, the Vietnamese guerrilla tactics, which are not about having bigger muscles. It's about tricks, traps, outsmarting, using the environment, using the natural environment. Right, he covers himself with mud. He builds like stick drop holes. He has like various logs and other little booby traps all over the place, which is why the Vietnamese fought using psychological warfare, like distracting and disorienting. He doesn't. Arnold is like not a small guy, but he doesn't win by punching the predator harder than the predator can punch back, right? But it's kind of like in the beginning, all the dudes are big, muscly, people who are like operating 80s CrossFit gyms, or like they're all like pumping iron protagonist people. But they all get their asses killed, right? And that was kind of the point. One of the points of that's one of the probably the better things about the Predator movie. But all that is like forgotten in Mr. Gamergate rage, Mr. Fandom Menace, Mr. There's too many women in my whatever comic book video game thing, and I can't deal with it, Anyways. Okay, we're not talking about Sandman, but coming back to Sandman though. The point was that in Sandman, there is, stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense, a lot of people glossed past the things that didn't make a lot of sense. There you go. Got to get rid of these tabs before my computer explodes. A lot of things did not make a lot of sense in the comic books, and then later in the show. And, obviously it didn't make it wasn't that big of it wasn't such a big problem that people hated the books and hated the show. Which is like, which is fine. Now people who are like sticklers for, I don't know, hard sci-fi, or they're like, people that are real stickler. I mean, no, if the thing really, really, really makes absolutely no sense, right? And it rings really hollow. Well, it's just many things happening. If the visuals and the action or some other aspects of a movie are not strong enough, then the loose ends, right? The untied knots, the holes in the plot show more when people are bored, distracted, or they're just not really happy with the movie, and then you're paying more attention to those things. Now if the movie is, if the movie is, Sandman at least is like very entertaining. You're too busy like trying to, when you're reading it, you're appreciating the art and the drawings and the comics. You're like thinking about, what it would be like if dreams and sleep vanished. And so then the other like the inconsistencies, like when Sandman is refusing to speak, which would have let him out of his prison at any point over 100 years, then those things it's less glaring, is what I'm trying to say. And also, if you suddenly don't like the movie because you're a racist, sexist guy, and then you see there's like a Rey in your Star Wars, or even worse, there's like an Asian woman, like the Asian girl in the Star Wars, then you're all I'm looking for all those inconsistencies now, because oh my god, I can't deal with there's non-white, non-dude people as protagonists, and I can't masturbate to all the people that are the gender I want to masturbate to in this movie. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to find all the plot holes now. Anyway, I'll get off of that. But anyways, and the Sandman is not a movie about a dude sitting in a glass box. Although the whole first episode is basically the whole at least one or two of the episodes is mostly he's being stuck. As he's stuck though, he is needing. He wants to get out, right? Obviously, he doesn't communicate that at all, and he, the outside world starts falling apart. It's implied that things start going wrong because people are losing their sleep, dreams are drying up, people aren't dreaming anymore. It has very Joseph Campbellian sort of energy to it. Neil Gaiman is like somebody that's definitely, I don't know if he's not like a hero's journey person, but Joseph Campbell likes to like just reach and grab at all of the mythologies and all of the cultures of the world and drag them in, and a lot of it is dealing with it jumps all over. Like the devil, they go to hell. There's Satan's there. They have like there's like African version of certain satanic figures. It kind of moves back and forth. There's people who were one gender in the original Sandman are a different gender in the modern in the Netflix show. I think some people were upset about what's Lucifer in the Sandman. Some people were upset that Lucifer in the Sandman, Lucifer Morningstar, was played by somebody who was supposed to look like David Bowie, right? But David Bowie had an androgynous look. I mean, I don't know if have you ever seen David Bowie in the Life on Mars music video? Like David Bowie looked like a woman like most of the time, actually. I would say half or more than half of the time. So then they had somebody. The Lucifer is played right in Netflix by Brienne of Tarth, the actress that plays Brienne of Tarth. All he knows who this is. This person. Yeah. And so, Gwendolyn Christie, that's what it is. And so, the Gwendolyn Christie's Lucifer is because they're like, it's supposed to be like David Bowie, but David Bowie's dead. Number one, David Bowie would be too old. Number two, and also it's one of those things again where it's like, this is all made up stuff. This is like fantasy stuff. This is BS. It's not BS. It's just like, this is like this is not reality. Lucifer, I mean, you can have your religious beliefs, but Lucifer isn't walking around in broad daylight, like Joe Biden. It'd be like if you cast Joe Biden in a movie. I mean, most people don't really like that guy. He has a approval rating is like a slightly lower than feces, I think. But Joe Biden, if you cast a woman to play Joe Biden, now people like, what's up with that, right? But Lucifer is, it's not a real character. It's a mythological entity. So, and it's also a mythological entity recast into a 80s comic book that is now being made into a Netflix movie. So, anyways, but the people that are mad about that are a lot of people who are like the kind of people that get mad about these. They get mad when there's a woman in a Predator movie as a protagonist, right? Anyways, like man, if there was an internet when Alien vs Predator had that black woman, the first Alien vs Predator, it would like that if the YouTube had existed the way that it does now. It might have broken the internet at that time. Anyways, but Alien vs Predator was not the best of all of the movies. I mean, just in terms of compared to the Aliens, especially, it's not like the best of the movies. But anyways, so the Lucifer character shows up. You have various other minor demonic entities. Can't remember all their names. And trying to go back here. So, but the Sandman and so a lot of the show revolves around the Sandman trying to get his trying to get his objects back. Like he's lost his ruby, that makes your dreams come true. He lost his sand. He's trying to track these down, find them. He has to go to hell to find some of them. Meets demons. Meets Constantine, the demon hunter. Right, and so that's another one of these figures that shows up. Has to and so it's happening in a very surreal everything. It's like everything is kind of metaphorical in one way or in another. There's the son of that Burgess guy who imprisoned the Sandman, he has to, he's kind of like got messed up, and he believes that there should be no hope in the world, or she believes that the Sandman is the problem, right? The Sandman makes people believe wrong things, because part of it is the Sandman brings dreams and it brings hope. Coming back to the concept of, I didn't talk about everything I said I was going to talk about, but I did talk about how dorky Neil Gaiman is. This guy is such a dork, man. Look at this fucking dork, man. Look at this guy. Not that I care about what people look like particularly, but I'm just going to say, like, Neil looks like, look, he's such a dork, man. I'm just joking, obviously. You can look however you want to look, but he does still kind of look. He does still look like flock of seagulls, you know. I mean, he looks like he's trying to be the cool goth dude in the '80s still, which is like, you know. But I guess, you gotta sell books. You gotta sell books to. You gotta sell books to all of the English majors and the people who were drama dropouts, and they want to air out their useless. Mythology and creative writing degree, and Neil's there to help you and be there when you need to ship some Aziraphales. He's there for you. He's there for you if you're like, Twilight was not erudite enough for me. I feel insulted by Twilight, even though I still read it. I read all of Edward and Jacob trying to get with Bella Swan. But I am a more discerning lonely goth person, and so I'm gonna have a more sophisticated graphic novel Edward Cullen, and so I've chosen this guy. I forget the actor's name, but this guy, he looks like, I mean, I'm Batman. The Batman. Same. I don't know how old people are who are watching this, but if everybody's old, you're gonna get all these references. But if you're, if you're 15 years old, I don't know, that could be violation of TOS. This is not a stream for kids. But if you don't know who Edward Cullen is played by Robert Pattinson, who also plays the Batman. And half of the planet lost their minds when this happened. Lots of people read these books. They were super popular. But again, the quality of writing, right? Have you ever read these fucking books? It's like Edward Cullen's sparkly diamond skin twinkled and his butterscotch nipples were very butterscotchy. And then I took a bite from his caramel irises, and then his buttery scotch nipples frolicked in the daisies with me, and then his hair, he looked like a Mormon pastor, because I'm a Mormon lady. Hey, I'm a Mormon lady that wrote the Twilight books, and I made hundreds of millions of dollars doing it, because people can't fucking tell the difference between good and bad writing. They just gobble shit up that goes on the bookstore shelves, just like Western propaganda. They can't tell bullshit from reality. That's why I have to stream. Anyways, and tweet. But anyways, Edward Cullen was you look at it, it's like the same guy. It's like the same guy, but it's just like this one is like a little sadder and he's a little thinner. Like Edward is eating a little more Big Macs. It might not be, if he's vegan, he's doing a little CrossFit. He's doing like vampire CrossFit. It's like hanging upside down and reaching for Ozzy Osbourne bats. I think that's what vampire CrossFit is. Anyways, all jokes aside, Those are two dudes from another Neil Gaiman show called Good Omens. That I don't need to do any more. Neil Gaiman has all the Netflix fucking clout. He has all of the movie clout. He's made all of his books into movies at this point, or shows. So I don't need to promote any more of his stuff. But anyways, yeah. But so the character though in the show is trying to like he wants to help the human people, right? Like he doesn't talk a whole lot, he's very quiet, kind of like Edward Cullen. He just creeps around and hits on girls 100 years younger than him, which really messed up grooming shit, man. And that's why there's a movie called Fright Night that Holly was watching that's like the anti-Twilight. But Dream doesn't yet hit on any girls that are like, well, technically they would be infinite years younger than him, because Dream is immortal and endless. So he's been around for infinity time. So that's even weirder than being a 100-year-old vampire hitting on 15-year-old girls in high school. Anyways, the endless. So Dream has his kingdom, right? In his dream in the Sandman. So I can get a picture of that. He has his kingdom that crumbles, right? It crumbles and falls apart. Yeah, here. Like this is. Oh, that's in Lucifer's place. So he has his kingdom. As I said, he is a monarch, right? But when he is in prison, it falls apart. Dreams fall apart. He loses his subjects. They all flee and they leave. I mean, he's been gone for a century and things are falling apart, right? As he's lost his power, and so the power of dreams in the human world and in his ethereal plane, wherever the fuck he is, somewhere adjacent. He's like the parking garage for Stranger Things' underside. I think that's where he is. I don't know. So he is, being Edward Scissorhands minus the hands, walking around like a goth in his garden. And then he comes back a century later and it's all falling apart. And he's trying to like rebuild, right? He's trying to rebuild what's falling apart. And the human world is also falling apart because people don't have hope and don't have dreams. But then there's then the son of Burgess, played by somebody from Harry Potter, the son of Roderick Burgess, Alex Burgess, that's his name. Alex Burgess believes that he's a ultra doomer, basically. He believes that the problem is that there are any dreams, and he believes that that the Sandman is the problem. People have been living in dreamland. Let's try and get Alex Burgess, the old one. Yeah, this one. Yeah, and so he's like, people. The problem is people have been living in dreamland. They're not living in the real world, right? And so in the real world, this guy, in the real world, if people were honest to each other and they stopped lying to each other, right? Because part of Alex's deal is his mother was lying to him his whole life, right? And making a life up because they're trying to survive, his horrible dad. The mother takes him away from his horrible daddy who imprisoned the Sandman. And so his mother's been lying to him his whole life, and now he wants everyone to tell the truth. And he's like, the problem is the Sandman dreams and dreaming and living in this alternate reality is what's destroying the world. It's not that the Sandman went away. That's the problem. The problem is the Sandman needs to go away forever altogether. And so there's one scene where he goes into a diner and it's like, what if everyone was telling the truth and there were no lies ever, right? And so he wishes into it, because he has this ruby that he wishes into existence, a reality where everyone has to tell the truth. And he's kind of sitting there and like moping around and going like, look at all of you diners, look at all of you people just walking around with your meaningless lies, but I, mopey sad white boy with all of my deep introspective thoughts, know all of your secrets. You are just lonely and you want to have the approval of your mother or your father, and you just want to you are trying to make everyone happy, but you can't even make yourself happy. You sad waitress, and you're the unhappy married couple, and you should just go off and be gay, but you can't because it's the 1980s, you know. And it's kind of like some of this a little bit weird in the diner scene, because like for Gen Z, it's like it's not really weird to have gay people of that age. It's kind of like with Stranger Things is a little strange for the kids are like, what is this where, you know, you can't be gay and you can't be lesbian? Because I mean, for Gen Z generation, they're much less qualms about that sort of thing, and it's much less of a stigma as it was to be gay in the 80s, as an example. I'm trying to find the Sandman diner scene, and so I mean, and I know they were trying to rework it, but some of the things are like, some of these things are not quite reworked as much as they could have been reworked, you know. And so there's a scene in the diner, where all the people in the diner are being forced to tell the truth to each other, which I mean, it's kind of interesting as a kind of metaphysical hypothetical, right? Which is, you know, it's fantasy, so. But all the people in the diner, as they're forced to tell the truth to each other, start getting into fights, right? The one dude is like, yeah, I've been cheating on you. Yeah, I'm having sex with somebody else. It's just all this like dirty laundry. I never liked you. I just had sex with you so that I could get a better position and have money and nice things. And you're really, you know, so everybody's getting really, they're just saying, they can't lie, right? So they're just saying everything. And then everyone starts having sex with, you're like, oh, I actually wanted to have sex with this person. I want to have sex. So then there's like literally everyone is having sex in about 5 minutes of that. And then shortly after that, they just get more and more upset. Like, you know, you lied to me, you lied. And then it's like everyone dies. And then who doesn't die? Well, that the Burgess character is a really nasty dude, right? And he had really nasty parents, and that's part. But anyway, so but you know, it's kind of like a major part of that scene and that sequence is that like people, you know, people. Well, I mean, it's not really a point to it. It's just kind of a very dark scene in a comic book written by Neil Gaiman. But it's Dream comes back and is like, no, people need dreams though. People need hope. People need, and that's another that shows up in the Satan when the king of dreams has to fight Lucifer, not Edward Cullen. No, the Riddler has to fight Edward Cullen, you know, in the Batman. But anyways, when the King of Sleep fights Lucifer, it's also there's a match where you have to each character says something like, I am the snake, I bite your leg, and then the other person is like, I am the horse that stomps the snake, and you go back and forth like trying to think of something that destroys the other thing, right? And so anyway, I'm not going to tell you that whole sequence, but at one point it's like, I am anti-life or something. I am the cold emptiness of the universe, right? A lot of this is kind of like sitting alone in your writer's cottage, right? Next to your mommy and daddy's mansion, right? When you're sitting there alone, not paying rent, thinking about the meaning of life, like, I don't know, fucking Walden Spawn, who was a rich white boy on stolen indigenous land with his mommy bringing him his food and, you know, and doing his laundry, living in his little cottage, writing about, oh, I wonder what the good life would be like as I sit here and take advantage of women's labor and settler colonial wealth, stolen genocide back wealth. I wonder what life is meaning is about. Maybe it's about looking at this water lily. Maybe it's about looking at this fucking water droplet. What if life is meaningless? What if nature is but the violence and cruelty of bears eating? You can see, I'm like, what if that bear eating that deer, that is nature, and it is all meaningless, and we're all just a bunch of organisms killing and fucking and sleeping and shitting, and it's all meaningless. And mommy, can you bring me more Pop-Tarts? Mommy, I want strawberry Pop-Tarts. You know, I don't eat blueberry Pop-Tarts. Now, these are like 200-year-ago Pop-Tarts. So they're like, mommy, bring me strawberry muffins. I don't want blueberry I can't philosophize in my white man writer's study and have best-selling New York Times novels if you don't bring me my strawberry muffins, mommy. So what was I thinking about that life being meaningless or meaningful? Let me think about that again. And let me get a degree in philosophy from an accredited university. in the United States or in London. Anyway, so I think that all life is meaningless. And I was reading Malthus the other day, or some philosopher white man, and he said that everything is actually we're just atoms spinning around, and anyways, so yeah, it's like, and it's like, and so it's Bobby, bring me my laundry so that I can further philosophize and entertain other spoiled, overprivileged Western people who are also sitting around taking advantage of global South and global and internally colonized non-white and non-man labor. Okay, bring me my fucking shit. God damn it! I need another 25 guitars. Where is my limited edition BC Rich Warlock signed by Metallica? I actually want that. Why haven't I got it yet? I want it so I can play Master of Puppets. I'm just kidding. It's gonna help me philosophize better so that I can write books that people eat for breakfast in upper middle class suburbs in the West. So, anyway, so it's not like it's like I'm not saying there's a problem with having a philosophy degree or writing books that are about that, but it's like it's metaphysical, and then there's like it's like the thing is like I think I'm somebody who writes science fiction and things where I make shit up for a living too. But I like when I made things like Neofeud, I know that that's a tendency is to just go completely hypothetical philosophical. That's one thing people actually say when you argue with liberals. Right? When left argue with liberals, it's often they'll go to these hypotheticals. What if there's a world where all the black people enslave the white people? What if indigenous people had land back? Where would we live? We would have no houses. We can't do that. It's like what? Stop fucking staring at your navel and thinking completely out of your Walden Spawn privileged, non-educated brain. Like grounded in some reality. You can. Like Neofeud, I tried to ground Neofeud 1 is not as grounded as in reality as Neofeud 2. I tried to make it even more so. In fact, I'm going to be putting out a short Neofeud 2 world game called Indigenous Star very soon, which is trying to be even more grounded in history and reality. It's also all made up, but again, it's kind of like you can do bullshit that tells the truth in the ways that matter, and you can do bullshit that's just all bullshit and it tells lies in the ways that matter. And so Neofeud is a game that's about cyberpunk. There's no science. There's no fucking robots walking around with thinking feelings. There's no levitating jacuzzis and levitating palaces floating into space. There's not flying cars everywhere. And there's sure as hell I don't have a cybernetic arm and a cybernetic back. Otherwise, I would be feeling back pain right now and needing to slather 5 pounds of Tiger Balm on it per day. So there's lots of made up stuff. But I'm trying to tell the truth about the the real problems that are racial economic inequalities. The 0.1% fucking hoarding all the goddamn resources and destroying everything on Earth and everything that matters. And then, and then there's philosophical introspection here and there, but it's like it can get really untethered, not really unhinged, because that is like a word. Anyway, but it can become very ungrounded from reality when it's privileged white dudes sitting around in their fucking writing cabin, in a way it's not unentertaining, still entertaining. But it's just like it misses something. It lacks something that I can't quite explain what I'm trying to tell you. But I know what it is. You know how I know what it is? Because I know what it's like to think like a white man. It's the stormtrooper out of my brain. But I know that it's missing something. You can't really know what it's missing until you've I don't know. But you know what it is when you're seeing out of the left eye of your two-eyed seeing. You know what it is. But when you're seeing out of the other eye, you're oblivious to it. Anyways, So, but there's that bit where it's like, if this dude is getting sad in the diner, going, if life is meaningless, and we all have to go away, and we're all just a bunch of liars and shitters, and the Watchmen was like that too. It was like people. We need a great ruler to be in charge, and Zack Snyder's version of it anyway. Ozymandias, right, King of Kings. So we have to kill 15 million people because that's what we have to do. That the world is just terrible, and I, Ozymandias, the King of Kings, and the nasty guy in the Watchmen have to just kill all these millions of people with my nuclear weapons, because that's the cost. It was written in the same time. Watchmen by Alan Moore was written in the same time as American Gods and Neuromancer as well. They have very similar tones. There's a lot of portions of it set at night. There's a lot of noir characters show up in it, like the there's a sleuthing detective chick. What's her name? Constantine. And then there's a sleuthing cases like a literal Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett 1940s noir protagonist, and then you have who's the one from what was the last one I said? Neuromancer. The Watchmen. Obviously, you have what's his face? Rorschach. He looks like a goddamn detective. He's like a mummy detective, and he talks like one too. And life is meaningless and cruel and nasty and bad, and it's all bad. And then we all get cancer and we die, and we all start talking like Chuck Palahniuk and writing like fucking what's his name? What's that guy's name? Generation X, Michael Source, Douglas Coupland, because we're all sad, and then we read books about serial killers because we're sad, horrible people. But there's something about that. It's like everything sucks and then we die. Why is it always privileged white people who have fucking 5 leopard print couches that write books about that, and make movies about that? It's like you don't see the people that like literally like are dying from famine. They don't say that. They're like more hopeful than people in the first world writing these depressing ass fucking shit. It's like the global south is like, oh, thank God we have food and we're gonna be coming up in this undoing of the global south. The Vietnamese military don't say that. They're not like, oh, life sucks and then you die. Like they literally are born and then they get killed at the age of 5, many millions of them, by starvation and or Agent fucking Orange. But they don't go, life sucks and then you die from Agent Orange in my rice paddy. They're like, we will fight in an unending, indestructible fashion to defeat empire, colonization, and capitalism. We will be victorious despite dying by the millions of famine and sanctions and war. It's only in the global north and all these fucking sad white boys write this shit like, life sucks and then you die in my fancy office with too many guitars and 25 copies, a fucking limited edition $1,000, prints of fucking Mass Effect or some shit. Oh, life sucks and then you have too much shit. Anyways. I'll stop dunking on overprivileged first world people. I say that because I had that mentality. I know what it is. Never had as much. I never had that much shit, but not quite that much shit. But it's kind of like everything is terrible and it's gonna fall apart. But it's kind of like these are not really grounded in reality. Yes, things have been not as good for people in the 1980s. Reagan was Reagan, but I mean, none of the U.S. presidents have been good to 7 billion, 90% of the world, right? None of the U.S. presidents have ever been good to black and brown people, despite all of the Kamala Harrises and the black and brown faces in the high places, right? The 1980s was a brief window when it was doing pretty good for the white American privileged world, and then it started getting a little bit hard, especially for the white boys, because there were too many women in their corner offices. Hey, that was the mad quartering and the Voshes, and those are the MAGA and the mad white boys, right? The incels and the Reddit and the 4chan and the Gamergates, right? Of the 19 and the Boogaloos of the 1980s. They were like, why are there women inside of my fucking corner office? This is the man's club. I have my smoking jacket. I fuck everything that moves, just like in Mad Men. What are all these women now getting jobs in Nakatomi Plaza? You can look at that one way and go, it's like, Bruce Willis is sad that there are women, in Die Hard, right? Bruce Willis is a sad white man that the women have jobs that pay equivalent to dudes. Not that women should want jobs under fucked up imperial capitalism, but it's kind of like, but the dude response is, I should have all of the unjustness. We shouldn't have to share it with Hillary Clinton and all of her shoulder padded, Rachel from fucking Blade Runner, neoliberal women with like more degrees than me. Why are all these women having all these degrees? You go to university to think. Thinking is anathema to womanhood. You have to go back to the kitchen. But anyways, but you see like the 80s was a time when things suddenly got a little bit more difficult for people of the first world of particular limited demographics. And then it became the darkest time in the world. But that was not the darkest time. That was a time in which the people who controlled the microphones, the megaphones, the publishing companies, the comic books. Dune is a terrible fucking book. Dune's writer Frank Herbert got his book published that is like ghastly. Let's be fucking real. Because he is a tall, white, privileged man. Stephen King is a terrible fucking writer. Neil Gaiman and Gibson, they're good at putting pretty words together, but their fucking books are fucking full of plot holes. I'm sorry. But nobody looks at them because of who they are and their positionality and access. If there was a world in which there was justice given, Boots Riley would have billions of dollars of funding to make all the fucking movies that he ever wanted because he's making the important ones. But he needs a white man with $1 billion oligarch fossil fuel company owning parents. Armie Hammer, now he's gone all weird cannibal shit, post left, whatever now, but I don't know what he's doing. But Armie Hammer had mega clout to get Sorry to Bother You made, but there's no justice for people who are actually capable of producing good, important art in the world under Western capitalist barbarous systems. It goes to white men who have no fucking talent, but have a lot of hubris and a lot of sad boy bullshit to splatter all over everyone else. That's the reality. So anyways, I'm sorry I had to hit everybody in the face with that, but you know, it needed to be said. But now we have, anyways, but everybody's in love with the shit that mediocre white dudes put out, and so we have to watch another 25 remakes of Dune. Or not. Hopefully we have the end of the Western-led so-called rules-based order before that. But you know, I have entire streams just about Dune if you want to go watch that from last year. Science fiction, fantasy, all genres of writing are full of mediocre white bullshit. That doesn't help anyone. But talented filmmakers in art, in music, in cinematography, and in everything else, who are disproportionately not white men, make movies of their shit so that it keeps being enjoyed and reconsumed. And the IP of corporations that are owned by rich white guys like Disney keep taking the IP that their 60-year-old grandpas made and remaking their bullshit because it suits their interests, despite disproportionately non-straight cis white guys making all the content. You know, all the writers and all the content creators that are going on strike and unionizing and quitting all their big content IP farms, like fucking all of them, and all the big techs, right? You know, like, you know, like you know, it's people that are actually making and producing and lighting and acting and editing and doing all these things in the movie, right? Like doing a lot of the actual work, the thousands of people it takes and the millions of hours it takes to make these shows and shit. They're disproportionately not white dudes, but it's their stories that keep getting retold. 98% of the producers' rooms that Anthony Mackie says, like 98% of the rooms that he's been in, and the after parties of Disney have all been white guys. Who doesn't matter. And I bring that point up a lot. It doesn't matter who they put up in front. And you can tell those shows that are not, like Reservation Dogs, and A Prey is another one, right? You can tell those shows that are, and you know, I would wager. Well, Black Panther was one, and The Harder They Fall, I think, was another. You can tell which ones are not, and they tend to not be very, very, very well reviewed in the white man's world. But anyways, that's enough dunking on that stuff because, you know, we can't do that all day. It's 12:57. So, but you know, that's just some frustration that, like, why do we have to keep reading all these people's stuff, you know? And part of it is that, you know, what people choose to pay attention to there's not really any way that could ever be decided democratically. It's not really that's not really a way to really ever do socialism of people's attention. Like, you know, it's not really gonna work. It just, you know, so we have what we have, and people watch what they watch, and people buy. You know, now if economic inequality came down, then the stories and the shows and the games and the entertainment and the social media accounts of people that are saying things that people want to hear and that are important would be more equally distributed, because you can buy marketing for all of these big shows. You can, if you have money, like it's kind of like buying countries and politics, buying politicians. You can also buy entertainment success by putting yourself at the top of the Steam algorithm with millions of dollars, putting your, you know, marketing, just buying marketing, buying your thing, You're buying 1,000 million follower influencers to love on your shit, right? And go, oh, this is the best game and movie. You should go watch it. That's how you do that. You just pay. It can in some ways it can be. It's a little bit more difficult than just buying radio ads and TV ads and magazine ads and shit. But in other ways, it can be even more impactful because people don't even realize how much money influencers are paid. They don't realize that they're being influenced by influencers. When you look at a magazine ad or you look at a TV ad, you're like, oh, that's an ad. It already loses a little bit of its, it doesn't fully lose its hold, but it loses a little bit of the power to influence you. But when that YouTuber that you like, right, that talks about how they're cleaning their house or they comment on action movies, you don't realize how much money they're being paid behind the scenes to say certain things along with thousands of other influencers about this or that movie or that show, right? But they all are, because that's how they make their fucking money. That's the real money, right? Is being paid to have taste-making opinions about particular things, and that's not. But if everybody had more equal amounts of money, then it wouldn't. Anyways, this is just philosophizing about how much better the world would be under communism, which it isn't. Anyways, but back to the Sandman, because I gotta wrap this up. Sandman, I gotta go finish. Anyways, I am working on the sequel to a game set within the world of Neofeud 2. I'm actually almost done with. I'm done with basically the entire game is done. I have to finish the trailer for it. And so if you like Neofeud 1, actually let me take a short break to recollect my thoughts and use the bathroom real quick. If you like Neofeud 1 and you want to support the continued work on Neofeud 2, consider becoming a patron, supporting us on Ko-Fi. And Neofeud is a cyberpunk game that is a game, it is a dark, it's not the happiest game in the world. It's a dark world, but it's like based on reality. I try to ground it in reality, on the struggles of Black Lives Matter, on the struggles of the impoverished peoples, on the struggles of peoples like myself, the Native Hawaiian, and other indigenous peoples who have our languages and our cultures crushed and our rights stomped on, and our children taken by the governments and the social work system, and then ripped from our families to destroy our indigenous communist ways, actually. And so Neofeud is a game that is, robots and fantasy and lots of made up. There's characters that look like the Predator, like that guy, right? And there's Terminators, and it's, but then it's about, what it's really about is trying to address and deal with the actual issues, the military, police, prison, industrial complex, runaway inequality under capitalism and feudalism and capitalism not being very different, but evolutions of the same system that haven't gotten rid of. There still is feudalism and capitalism at the same time. And the West is about using fancy words and big English degrees to lie about how much of these systems still exist and pretending like things are better when they're not. And so those themes, co-opting revolutionary movements like what the Public Enemy, like what Tupac represented, like the destruction of the Black Panthers, and then taking Martin Luther King and then making him into a symbol of the goodness of the United States. All that is actually what Neofeud is really about. All those processes and the coups of the U.S. military-industrial complex. So if you want to see more of that kind of stuff and less of this, I don't know what this other crap is, please support us through Patreon, Ko-Fi. How much is the streams worth to you? If you can afford $5 a month or $3 or whatever you can afford, it really helps. Don't forget to like the stream and share. And of course, I will be right back, and I will give you my final thoughts on the. I didn't mention like a couple more things, but we'll have my final thoughts on Sandman after this.
The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller. Have some trouble, youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
I had to build my own family. I ain't your son. I ain't your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Okay, so Neofeud is already out. It is on, of course, on itch and also on Steam. So yeah, you can go grab that on itch. It's not on sale right now, but you know it's often going on sale. So if you don't have, I know inflation sucks, but you know, Neofeud has a 0% inflation rate over the last 5 years. You know, the milk's gone from $3 to $8. You know, used cars have gone from $10,000 to $50,000. Right? Wood is, you know, a 2x4 costs as much as is worth its weight in gold, literally now. But Neofeud has no inflation rate. It's always been $14.99, and it's like $4.50 when it's on sale. It's always been the same price. Anyways, yeah. So anyways, since I'll briefly show a little bit of that new game since I don't think I've shown that at all on this stream yet, but it's nearly done. I'm gonna try to get it done by tomorrow, but I gotta finish like the website and the trailer. But this is the it's a game set in the world of Neofeud 2. It's like a small game set in the world of Neofeud 2 and Neofeud 1. It kind of connects Neofeud 2 and Neofeud 1 together. And it is called Indigistar, INDIGI star. I'm not sure if there's going to be a dash in between those yet, but let me see if I can get that on the screen. But I'm just going to show a little bit of it since I haven't shown it on this channel at all. Let me get my head out of the way here. Yeah, so this game, Indigistar, is going to be, and the main character is, it's set in a future, and you play a peace officer of a race of indigenous aliens that have been indigenous to this world for a long time, that are being invaded by a capitalist colonial space empire. And it just happens to have red, white, and blue insignias that also have stars on them. It's not the United States though. Okay. So for eons, the indigenous Venuaura people lived in peace on their planet, in harmony with nature and each other. Hunter-gatherers sprouted into villages, villages begot cities, yet millennia passed without war. Over time, the Venuaura built great civilizations while maintaining the Garden of Eden, the mother Homer which birthed them. I know that's not the official narration. So. They blossomed toward the stars, sailed Hokuva'a, starships, across the galactic Silk Road, trading with other people. Now, the unhealed descendants of Roman trauma, the Utopian Empire arrives to eradicate and plunder. The mother Aina is devastated, our relatives broken. The water of life is poisoned. So anyways, and now it's a point and click. The game is done. Not available yet, but you have to follow me on Twitter and follow the itch site if you. It's gonna come out on itch very soon. But yeah, this is just a little bit of the game. So it's like Neofeud 1 where you click and you point. That's the main character. The water is tainted. I feel that the pond field will bring more death than life, and so you have to stop interstellar colonizers from destroying and despoiling and crushing your world. As a member of the Liberation Army of the Communist Party of the Venora and the Galactic Silk Road. It's what is wrong with these invaders? They race to suck primitive fossil fuels from our Jurassic ancestors' bones. Do they not know of fusion, particle, antiparticle collision, and black hole drives? So part of the thing about this world is the indigenous people, while maintaining coexistence with nature, are also more technologically advanced by far than the human, fair-skinned human space colonizers, who still run their gas-guzzling starships on diesel fuel because, well, capitalism is not good at actually inventing and producing new technology over the long haul. So anyway, if you find that interesting and you want to see more of that, this is going to be available in the next very soon. I can't say when. I'm working on the trailer and the website right now. Yeah. Yeah, the game does have a start menu, so that's the intro. So it's almost done. Big deal, yes. It will be done very soon. So yeah, look out for that. So you can follow all the social media so that when it goes live, you'll know when it's available and where it's available. Anyways, okay. So my final thoughts though. I was working on that for the last like many days straight, just like nonstop working on that thing. So anyway, my final thoughts on this is, so Neil Gaiman trying to be cool, darkness, the dork. I talked about all of that already. Cold War. Cold War was a war to prevent the spread of communism, right? Which is a war to prevent the spread of, again, indigenous reality. And so trapped within the prison of the capitalist side of the Cold War, the white supremacist, patriarchal capitalist side of the Cold War, the end of the world, the worst thing that could happen, right, is a world in which, the access to unlimited capital, right, and in particular, cis white hetero men's 50s buying off, right, which is what it was, because there were in the earlier 20th century there were movements that had ethnic diverse, they were multiracial and involved all genders, right, that were pushing for economic equality, right, and during the near end of capitalism in the 1920s, end of 20s and 30s, right, and then capital bought off white men in the 50s. Women became went back in the kitchen and were Stepford wives of their master white husbands, and the black and brown people continued to be oppressed. And that's what otherwise there wouldn't have been an entire uprising of the civil rights movement that did not succeed at giving economic equality or social equality to black and brown people even then or now, right? So the worst thing that the West could have experienced, doom, was when white men have a harder time getting a cushy living in the 1980s, having ripped jeans and playing punk shows and hanging out, listening to the Ramones in an abandoned warehouse somewhere, right? But that was not the worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world would be in fucking Vietnam, South Korea, or anywhere, or the socialist countries as they're under siege, like North Korea, or Cuba, under siege from the United States embargoes, hundreds of billions. The worst thing in the world is not for the world, is not, right? Because the West is 5% of the world, really. The worst thing in the world was we might have a less good experience as straight white men in the United States and Britain and Canada, because Neil Gaiman is British, than my daddy did. But that's a very limited idea of what the worst thing in the world is, right? And so, but that's when the story started to become, oh my God, it's dark. All the Hollywood was all dark. It's all black. It's all going out. It's because liberals who run Hollywood are, by and large, they're not they're not on the side often. Although where it matters in capitalism and military industrial complex they are, but they don't run on what the Republicans did, and so Hollywood tends to make darker movies and bad stuff when Republicans are in charge because they're trying to make everything look bad. It's kind of like the Republicans are going like, it's the worst time in the world. It's the worst time in the world. The Democrats are terrible. Oh my God, the FBI is terrible. But it's like, doesn't mean you should support the right? But and the Democrats are like, no, everything is great and hunky dory. We're all doing good. Look, Biden's getting a hold of inflation. No, you're not. Look, we passed some kind of bill. You didn't pass Build Back Better. Build Back Better was fucking 50 years too fucking late, and you didn't even fucking pass it. We passed something. What? COVID's gone, everybody. Pretend like there's no COVID. Actually, there's 900 million cases of COVID. Everyone had COVID. There's been enough COVID cases for every American to have had it 3 times. You can't taste, you can't think straight. Brain fog, you got new kidney and brain problems, you got new heart problems. That's because you had 3 bouts of long COVID and everyone's permanently disabled. But it's gone, everybody. And actually, if you've had COVID once, you count as immunocompromised, so you're already at higher risk, not lower risk, after you've had COVID. Having COVID the second time can be worse, and it often is worse. But we have to forget that, right? Because why? Because Democrats are in charge and they run fucking a lot of the liberal media and Hollywood. And so the movies that are made when Republicans are in office, like the 80s, right? Which is, it's not all, Hollywood is run by military industrial complex and capitalism, but it leans toward the Democratic side because it's California and it's bluer. And so when the Republicans are piloting the Death Star, Democrats make sad, bad, everything sucks movies. In the same way that Republicans go, everything sucks, and we're all having our liberties and our freedoms taken. And when we get in charge, we definitely won't oppress any liberties and freedoms. And by oppressing liberties and freedoms, I mean making people fucking follow basic health precautions like wearing masks and shit. But it's like, right? So anyways, but that's a wider point about why the 80s were so dark. But I think that's actually a big part of it. If you look at the kind of stuff that was Man in the High Castle, the stuff that's coming out in the Trump era, it got a lot 80s. It's the end of the world like stuff, and then they kind of pulled back on it a little bit after Biden got elected because now we're saved by our great Democratic Jesus Christ. His name is Joseph Biden, right? And the squad, they're here to save us all, and now everything's better, right? Aren't you feeling so much better? Anyways, so the importance of multipolar dreams, though, and anyways, I do, speaking of the dreams are important. So when the guy is like, Mr. Ultra Doom Out guy is like, everything is bad, the world sucks, and then you die, and everything's bad, and everyone just has sex and fucks and then dies. And part of it is, if everyone were to live their truth, everyone would just kill each other and have sex and take everything. And it's like, yeah, I mean, white dudes do that, and a capitalist, white supremacist, broken Western world, colonialism did that. But that's not what everyone in the world does. Again, that's a universe. It's the universalization of Western barbaristic capitalist tendencies. Now, people around you, if you're a white guy, most of the guys around you are going to be horrible assholes who probably aren't masking, and they're probably lying to, grooming, and abusing their people, the women around them. If they're imperialists, they're grooming entire countries, like grooming Korea with Western media, grooming Taiwan to be the next Ukraine and get millions of their people killed for military-industrial complex profit and to stop the spread of communism. And so, so you are surrounded by horrible people, true. But then again, it's like universalization to go, well, all of humanity is horrible, right? Because me and the people in my smoking jacket rich boy club are horrible and are having affairs and they're cheating and they're going into the office and they're like stabbing each other in the back to climb the ladder, and they're like mistreating, they're racist and they mistreat their staff, and they're causing famines in Africa to make the economy scream and shit. The more powerful you get, the worse, more damage you can do. It's basically what it is. But you start at a low level, abusing your wife, abusing your children, so that when you get to the higher level, you can abuse millions of people and billions of people at the highest level. Abuse all your workers as a capitalist boss. Abuse your congregation by lying and cheating and having affairs and being homophobic while actually being secretly gay. Being publicly gay people should burn, but secretly you're having gay affairs, like countless pastors do, right? So you're surrounded by liars, cheaters, and stealers because you're a white man in the Western white man's capitalist world. But when you say all of humanity is therefore terrible, and if we let humans do whatever they wanted, they would just destroy that world. That is the guilty conscience. That is the projection, right? And it sucks that maybe you may try not to just surround yourself with horrible, shitty assholes that you are currently surrounding yourself with. Maybe listen to some people of color and some women and some other people and try to figure out. Maybe you'll find that you're not as straight and as cis as you might have thought you once were, and maybe you'll find other things out, But when you surround yourself with terrible fucking assholes, right? The world seems like everyone is a terrible fucking asshole, right? And so then that never really gets dealt with. I mean, I guess Sandman does kind of come back and go, well, maybe everyone wouldn't just lie and cheat and steal and kill each other. If a better white man ruled the world, like namely me, because I'm the king. I'm the good monarch. I'm the philosopher king. You see, and I can make people be good, as long as I'm in charge. But when I'm not, when the rules based international Sandman order is not in charge, well then it is dark authoritarian regimes around the world. So you should just let me be in charge and make people good. I'm just kidding. Sandman is not Mike Pompeo or Tony Blinken. Okay, he's not actually a neocon, but he is a monarch. Anyways, but it's like the dreams do matter. Like dreams do matter, and dreams do matter. At what people think is possible in the future does matter, right? The 1980s were a time when it was a very doomy time. It was a very apocalyptic-y time. Not that other times weren't, but people were really worried about a lot of things, more things in that time. It's 1980s was very 2020s-ish. People in the first world are very worried. They're like, oh my God, we're all doomed. We're all fucking climate doomed. We're fucking nuclear doomed. We're war doomed. We're inequality capitalism's doomed. We're all doomed. We're all fucked, There's a lot of that, and like, it's very nihilistic tendencies in the Western world, not in the rest of the world. The 9/10 of the world. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. For the first time, we're not being clobbered by sanctions. We're not starving to death at the age of 5. We're not being bombed in the smithereens. U.S. military is having to pull out of places. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. People should be happy for them. But that's the problem when you surround yourself with terrible, other shitty, selfish, garbage people like you. Is that you don't know that there are other people in the world that have been suffering, and now there's billions of people are actually suffering less now. Billions of people are suffering less now that your privileged ass is not running their entire economic and political reality. And that's also why people, even it doesn't matter who, people of any color, of any gender, of any background, in the first world should try to listen outside as well. That's why I try to put on these international panels too, so people can realize, Vietnam is doing better. Like Luna is like, oh my God, I love this shit. China is 4 United States. China is 2.5 white people's worlds. It's like all of Europe, US, Canada, and Australia is not even half of China. China is like fucking doing the best in the last silver century. They're in the best in the history. You should be celebrating. This is like utopia. It's the best time in the world. Yes, there's climate problems, but every problem that we have, we can make it better. And as indigenous people say, however bad the climate is, every fraction of the degree we stop is millions of human and non-human and environment and lives and non-human lives saved. And if we really put our minds to it and we stop being selfish little sad boys like some of these people, then a lot could be done. But it's a small minority of formerly very privileged people who are all crying in their very expensive latte, right? And so it's important for people of that background to try to find new dreams, not just like, that's why I call it Western dreams, right? Now it's the Western nightmare of, oh my God, there's 2 degrees. It's all, oh my God, this is like, that's not helpful. The Western nightmares that have replaced the dreams is part. I bring that point up a lot. Right? That's the goal of the ruling class, is to make people fall into it's like capitalist realism. A lot of leftists understand that, right? Not that there's not a real leftists in the West, but unfortunately, but there is also climate paralysis. There's nuclear paralysis. There's war paralysis. There's capitalism paralysis. And every one of the multiple paralyses freezing you into place with your nightmares that they have replaced your dreams with, right? Like a kind of demonic Sandman. Every one of those stops you from actually changing your country, your reality, your neighborhood, right? You're making change in the real world that would help you be a part of the solution. That is what we need, right? But as long as you don't do that, the capitalist system will continue to eat you and liquefy you in place as Vietnam and China and the global South starts getting better and better off, right? So it's actually, it doesn't, it's this weird paradox where being trapped within the mind prison of the Western world traps you like the Sandman, right? In a certain sense, inside you get trapped inside of a glass cage, and it actually is a lot like the Sandman being trapped in his little cage, right? Because the Sandman, he has actually a good metaphor in essence. The Sandman in his little glass cage is self-imprisoning, right? Like I said, he doesn't actually need to remain inside of the Burgess's. He doesn't need to remain inside of Burgess's prison for a century, right? He doesn't need to stay there. If he had but opened his mouth, if he had but tried, right? If he had but said, okay, if he had, done something like, I won't kill you, son of Burgess. If he just said that 90 years ago, he could have been let out. But what does he do? He sits there imprisoned by his own negativity, by his own fear and hopelessness, right? He says but that's the funny thing, because Sandman talks about, I'm here to bring humanity hope. I'm here to bring dreams and hope, and that's what stops people from all killing and sexing and doing all kind of weird, nasty things to each other, right? But he's like stuck there, not moving for a century, and that's kind of like what the West is doing, right? Stuck there, not moving, because they're having like a minusculely more difficult time than they used to have, which is not even close to as difficult as most of the planet. It's not even close to as bad as the most of indigenous and the black and the brown community. That they don't do that shit. They're not doing that shit. They don't have time for that, right? So in a certain sense, like, he is a good metaphor for the Western patriarchal white supremacist capitalist world, which is in that position. It's like whenever I see those articles, I look at who's putting them out. It's like it's virtually always by some blue check mark, blue yellow flag. I work for the State Department. I'm a big environmental scientist who is the son of a fucking millionaire from London. I'm a Canadian hyper privileged person who, like I care about plants and shit, and I have like lots of lots of disposable income, and I get sad about some of the plants dying, and I'm gonna just be sad, and like there's also climate scientists that are like, well, I'm gonna go get myself arrested, and that's, you do what you gotta do, and that at least some of them are taking some action. But I mean, the ones who just kind of like, oh my God, we're all screwed, and it's they lack the dreams, they lack, well, not just any dreams, they lack they lack non-West centered, right? They lack first world, non-US, non-white centered dreams, right? There are multipolar dreams. Go watch Reservation Dogs, right? Season 3, I love it. Season 2, right? It's like, hey, now it's time to go and, dude, you guys were ripping off, I was talking about Reservation Dogs, indigenous centered show. They're ripping up. They had a California dream. They had an American dream in season 1, where they're gonna rip off cars and they're gonna be gangsters and make a lot of money, go to California and be famous and rich and have a fancy career. And now they're like, oh man, maybe that was the wrong dream, right? Like maybe we shouldn't have aspired to be P. Diddy's and Biden presidents and well-paid influencers and rich people in Hollywood making a lot of money under America's imperialist capitalism. Maybe we fucked up, and they're like, we need a new dream. And then they talk to the answers. The answer's like, hey, maybe you got to go like right the wrongs that you've done, find something to do, the bear gets a job. The kids try to undo their curses. Like we have to do something to help our community kind of thing. Right. And so that's what they, so that's what season 2, a lot of it is about. Right. And so it's kind of like we have to find a new dream of what we're going to be other than wealthy, rich, successful individuals under capitalism. It's kind of another way to think about it, and we need to have a not American dream. We need an indigenous dream. We need our own Cherokee dream, or I think they're not Cherokee, but we need our Anishinaabe dream. We need our own dreams. We need our communist dream. We do need a dream. We can't have no dream, because that down that path lies our own version of our own hopelessness. And so, right. But it's also like, it's kind of like, we need that. And so like that part, like, and then, so like that, there's part of the show that does deal with that, where it's like, I have to, where it's like, I know it's hard for a lot of people to dream it now, because people are like, I just want to survive. My dream is to like maybe survive and not live 10 to my fucking house. And I know that sucks. Right. But even small victories, like I'm going to try to just like survive the next, period of time and not contribute to COVID. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to not spend 7 days a week in close quarter proximity to unmask people and spread fucking COVID and monkeypox. And I'm going to do everything I can to do that. I'm going to like try to just, do whatever I can to not make things worse and survive this, and hopefully we'll build something better. I know for a lot of people, it's like, I can't, I know this, because even us, we're like, holy shit, the inflation, the recession is like, it's not good. Like, I can see that people have like less to support us with, and that sucks. It's like, you can't tell people, have more money and give it all to us and buy more copies of the games and buy all the albums 5 times and shit. Right. But it's like, it's a reality that it's in a recession, which the 80s was having, right? It's going to be harder for people to like look forward to starting and doing newer and bigger things of any kind, right? Because things are sliding backwards. People are just like trying to hold on to what they have, right? But at the same time, it's kind of like, part of the building is also, right? It's an important part of Reservation Dogs is like, part of the building is not just about making money. It's about actually, part of the work is doing the political organization. Part of the work is just like, maintaining, relationships or yourself, not destroying and further things that are the healthy parts of what, because a lot has to fall apart in the United States, and it will. The West is going to fucking fall apart. But then part of the rebuilding, and again, it's not very much of the world, so it's a tiny fragment. But it's going to hurt when it comes down. But as it comes down, people have to like still, like I just saw like there was a thread that was like, Native Hawaiians, post your local businesses. Some people make t-shirts, they make candles, or whatever they do. They're like a farmer. Post your businesses so that we can build more authentic Hawaiian wealth, not capitalist corporate, Disneylandification of our culture that impoverishes rich white people. Like Disney Aulani is millions of dollars going to them, appropriating Hawaii, right? We want to have more Hawaiians actual making some kind of thing. You got to do something, right? But in the things you're selling, share your business in this thread, and then we will help empower you. And so we will need more of that kind of stuff, right? Because people will still after capitalism, after a capitalist dominated United States is gone, people will still have to do stuff like, in Cuba, people still got to wake up. They got to, if you're an electrician, you fix the electricity. It's more public owned, but I mean, if you're a road paver, you wake up, you pave a road, you're a nurse, you caretaker, you wake up, you caretake, you nurse. It's not like, and then everyone lives in utopia and we just frolic in the fucking field. No, that's another fantasy land. That's a Western dream of what communism what socialism, what a healed, functioning civilization would be like. And it's not like, you know, you will do less meaningless work. You will do less. So the work will be less damaging and soul destroying. But there's still going to be stuff to do, you know. There's still stuff to do. There's going to be less total stuff. You don't have to do as much stuff as you have to do in the U.S. to survive if you're a lower lower class working class people, right? But there's still stuff to do, and so finding out what that stuff is that you're going to do when you're not working for those corporate entities is part of the new dream, right? The new, you know, and Western is a word I just threw out there because it means like U.S., Canada, and just, you know, white supremacist, capitalist, imperial entities. But it's like the new dream for humans in places like North America and in places like Europe, whoever they are, whoever they come to be, they will need new dreams to aspire to. And so that part, one thing I like about that part of Sandman when that comes up, which is like Satan is like, what can replace, right? Satan is or Lucifer is like, what can I lost my Lucifer. Yeah. Lucifer's like, I am the anti-life. I am the end. I am coldness. I am the blackness that consumes everything. I am hopelessness. And then Sandman is like, I am a dream. I am hope, right? You know, it's like I am the infinite desire to build and to exist, and you know. And so it's kind of like, you know, and when the Burgess takes that away, people do kind of fall apart, you know. When they do lose all of their hope and all their dreams, they do become nasty. And Burgess is like, well, that's who people are. People are nasty, horrible killers when you take all the lies away. And it's like, you know, and dream. And so it's always kind of like, you know, and the challenge is like, well, you know, people, maybe it's not that people are lying to themselves, but people have to believe that what exists at present is not all that can be, you know. And so as indigenous people, right, if we didn't have dreams, right, as a native Hawaiian, you know, I'm not going to give you an I have a dream speech, right? But like, you know, I'm somebody, you know, I identify, at least I don't identify with Sandman in the sense that I don't recommend like sitting and being silent for a fucking century, and then being mad at people for shit that you could have stopped yourself, you know. That's bullshit. I don't know about that. I don't really want to look or be like Edward Cullen from Twilight, but I do identify with Sandman in the sense that like I talk about stuff that is, people say, Silver Spook, you're a dreamer. You're pie in the sky. You're living in fantasy land. You're just a dreamer. This is not real. It's not real. What are you talking about? Hawaii, you know, Hawaii is not some kind of great, you know, utopia. Hawaiians are just like, they lived in huts and they like, you know, had no electricity. Hawaiians are a bunch of barbarians. Silver Spook, Hawaii could never be even, no, and they always write that the first one is Hawaii never, advanced Hawaii never existed, right? And I have to be like, well, it did. Look, this is all the proof. And not only did it exist, you know, I have a Hawaiian socialism with Hawaiian characteristics. I have a Kanaka Maoli dream that we will have a Hawaii that has public mass transit that is first class in the world like we did, that has universal health care, the first in the world like we did, that has the world's highest literacy rate like we did, where we have incredibly educated, intelligent, well-spoken, well-read. We have an ecological civilization that doesn't destroy our environment, right? We don't have it right now, but you know, we will dream as we did, and not only dream 20,000 leagues under the sea submarines, we will build them, and we will build spaceships that will have Hawaiian spacecraft and starcraft that will rival and destroy the American whatever they can make in terms of capacity and ingenuity, because we did that. We were more technologically advanced. We were bigger dreamers than the United States, Britain, and all of its best and its brightest. Could not compare to Hawaii. That's the point of this whole thread. Not that we have to go back and be frolicking in the jungle. Not that there's problem with being understanding and being in tune with nature. That's what the game Digistar is really about, right? But you can be in tune with nature and also be technologically advanced. Build advanced machines that don't destroy and ruin everything, and visit other places without destroying those other places, both on the Earth and in space. right? That's why it's the Galactic Silk Road. It's not the Galactic Empire. And that's a huge dream. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anybody who dreams bigger than me, to be honest, right? People like come to me and they go, Silver Spook, how the hell are we going to build? How are we going to stop the U.S. and China in a Cold War? Silver Spook, your fucking Taiwan thread. I had no fucking idea. How is this possible? How are we going to build this? And I'm like, well, you know what you have to do is it does require, how can you stream for 5 years despite nobody listening to you? Is because I dream of I dream in my head that there's an audience watching this thing, and not because if you build your stream, they will come. But you have to picture, and that's one thing about science fiction that I like. You have to picture things that are not even close to reality right now. You have to think far beyond the horizons of right now. But that's what when you envision the islands, when you do navigation, right? When you bring the islands to you, that's what they say when you navigate. When you take the hoku lea or any other va'a, the canoe, the hoku va'a is a star canoe. Hoku lea is the star of godness. But in the Neofeud too, there's the starships. Hawaiian starships are hoku va'a that we create and produce ourselves. But to navigate on Earth using the stars, you have to see in your mind, without it being there, the island that you want to reach. You have to see in your mind the stars that are not there. You have to hold in your head entire galactic celestial maps in order to navigate, right? 20,000 miles of open ocean to reach every single continent on Earth 5,000 years ago. You have to be a deep seeing person, like Kilohoku, the word in Hawaiian that means to be the great navigator. It means to see far and deep and vast beyond all conception. It's really what it means. It means to visualize that which does not exist. And that's what science fiction, and that's what the Hawaiians did, who are the greatest science fiction and science fact peoples, is by seeing there is a world that is not imperialistic, that is an Asian and Pacific anti-imperialist alliance, a world with universal healthcare could exist, right? Before one of our women leaders, Emma, there was no such thing as free healthcare. All the healthcare you had, you paid for. There was no such thing as getting care for free. Certainly not in a quote unquote modern societies. Emma had to dream that up, and then make it reality by going on foot and working her fucking ass off. And then there was the world's first universal healthcare system. There was no such thing as an anti-imperialist world alliance. The Hawaiians said, we're going to build an anti-imperialist world alliance with China and Asia and the Pacific against the colonizer world. And then they started to work on it, and the U.S. cooed Hawaii, because the U.S. and the West and Europe knew that if Hawaiians were allowed to continue to wayfind this planet Earth, we would have found our way and led the world into the end of colonial capitalism and white supremacy. And so they had to coup us, to stop us. You see, is to crush the dream to maintain hegemony for another 130 years. That's why they coup great indigenous civilizations like Bolivia, because they dream beyond what is imagined in the philosophies of white men. That's why they have to keep trying to assassinate Cuba, and they keep trying to blow up Vietnam, because they cannot stand the possibility of an alternate to their so-called rules-based, great, so-called free, so-called democratic order, right? The real imagination is not to see starships and what if what if there's an alien race that was all living in holograms, and what if there are three-eyed tentacled blue men on another planet that's very much like ours, right? Like there's Guardians of the Galaxies and the Star Treks and all the Star Wars. That's not really what you really need an imagination for. The real imagination is to imagine a world in which all people are not crushed and dominated and constantly embroiled in violence and inequality and hierarchies. That's and it is not led by cis white straight guys like fucking Captain motherfucking Kirk. Like Star Trek is starting to get it right, but why is it still led by the United States and the West? Right? Why are they all? Why And also Anyways, so Star Trek was on the right path. There's some things that are moving there, and then they all got crushed. And by the time you got to the 80s and the 90s, you're imprisoned in a dreamless nightmare called capitalist realism, living in your little cage with this guy. They want to keep you in a glass ball so you cannot see, or in a steel ball where you can't see beyond your 4 fucking walls. Anyways, so that's me. Now who's becoming philosophical? Who's waxing metaphysical? No, it is important to imagine and see, but it also you have to But I try to ground these things in history, right, and in the realities, right. But then at the same time, how can we move towards histories? How can we move towards futures that we want based on the histories that we know exist and the creativity and the ingenuity that we have at the present, right? As opposed to, let me think of something in my fucking belly button lint and project that out there, right? Which is white dude science fiction. Anyways, that's the end of the stream. It's almost 2. So anyways, yeah, but anyway, I talked about this a lot, but let me just say, Sandman is not the worst show in the world, It's very entertaining, it's very pretty, there's very cool cinematography, If I watched Resident Evil recently, and Resident Evil is, I'm not one to talk about what is cheesy, what is high literature, and what is high culture. Sandman is a show, and then it's entertaining, I'm just commenting around it. So if you really love this show and you like Silver Spook, you attack my favorite thing, and I don't like you. Now, well, it's like, I'm not really talking about how good or not good the show is. Everybody does a fine job, in the show. As far as I can tell, there's just, there's aspects about it that's like, it is what it is, And so, but you can watch it. You don't watch it, but you know what? You have to watch Reservation Dogs. And like that's not optional. I'm sorry, you have to watch Reservation Dogs, or you're fired, or you're excommunicated from the church. I'm just kidding. I don't run a church, and I'm not a capitalist boss, and I'm not an imperial doctrine of discovery pope, so I can't excommunicate or fire you. But please watch Reservation Dogs, and please watch Day Shift is a good show that like I actually feel is like Day Shift is like an important show, I think, in the way that like Sorry to Bother You. It's like a show that has important things to say, I think. Reservation Dogs. Anyways, now we're done. So check the game out, play the game, buy the game. It really helps us out. Wish us the game. If it's Silver Spook, I don't have any money, man. I'm like broke as fuck. I'm so sorry. But wish us the game. Just share the stuff with people. Find somebody who has some money so that they can help us keeping the roof and the walls and the. We just finished our entire roof project. Me and my daughter, we finished that up, so we're really happy with that. Got basically a brand new roof, but that wasn't cheap, and it wasn't cheap in time either. 2 months plus, but we got it done. And but yeah, so we want to keep supporting literally having roofs, electricity and water and all the stuff that we need, and fighting to keep the water from being destroyed. Consider picking up the game, leaving a short review on itch.io. Consider also checking out the game on itch if you don't have the game. Look out on itch. If you use itch, I don't know if people play games here, but follow me on itch.io. So when that new Indigenous Star game comes out, it's gonna be you get a notification from it, and you can get Neofeud on sale over here as well on itch. And you can also check out other games like the Colonators, which is again I talked about it a little bit today. Kick capitalist colonizer butts out of Vietnam and retro arcade game glory. And also, you can check out Woman, where is a book by by a woman raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and is not meant to be a historical retelling, but it is a fictional book from the perspective of Mary on the Bible that is critiquing right-wing Christian Protestant North America. So consider checking that out. If you really don't like colonizers a lot, let's just say like you're like, you know what, Silver Spook, I'm only here to hear you dunk about colonizers. In fact, you could have gone way harder. Why didn't you go way harder? You should have gone like way harder than that, man. I wanted to like just like it literally like incinerate all the colonizers off this face of this earth, man. There's an album called Colonialism Going to Hell, and you can get this album of songs. They're metal songs about treating Earth Mama right, the end of the colonial era, the doomed Marines and colonial thieves, giving the founding ancestors of the Earth, including the black women of Africa and of the United States, Asians, black powder that were put in cannons to rule the world, speaking of Western imperialism, and the great navigators of the Pacific and the Turtle Island indigenous wisdom. So if you want to check out an album that's even hard, goes harder than this stream went, check this album out, and pick it up. And also, you can support us at patreon.com/neofeud, of course. Patreon.com/neofeud. You can support us in an ongoing way, get access to the Silver Spook Discord, get access to behind the scenes on stuff we're working on, and also support us in a continuous way to help us keep doing education and edutainment, and also keeping everybody with their basic material needs met and the roof over the children's heads over here, and also supporting future games. You can also follow at Silverspook Games at octodon.social on Mastodon, a decentralized, non-capitalist, federated, open source platform, and at Silverspook Games at octodon.social. I'm sorry, at Silverspook Games at Mastodon.social for the game stuff. And also you can follow, while we have access, of course, to the Death Stars satellites. I gotta save some of my voice. I actually have to voice act later today, but let me drink some water. You can follow at Silverspook Guy for my personal takes, and when I comment on very politely on Netflix series, you can. I'm just very politely commenting. That's all I'm doing. You can follow at Silverspook Guy for that. For the game stuff, at Silverspook Games minus the Ian Silver for stuff about specifically games related things, like Neofeud 1 sales and Neofeud 2 updates. You can also follow at Terminus C at Terminus C, which is a cyberpunk RPG game that I am the content director and lead writer of. That is finished with the exception of content testing and optimization. And so if you want to follow this game, which is coming soon, you can definitely check it out at Terminus C. And it also has a Discord, which you can join and talk to some of the creators of it. They're always the producer of this game is very friendly. He likes to hang out and talk to you about all kind of stuff. I shouldn't overpromise for him. He does respond often though. He responds to people in the thread. Sometimes with more excitement than people are prepared for, which is probably a good personality trait to have if you're producing things. Aaron is somebody who has an infinite amount. Aaron is the producer of Terminator Cyberpunk. He is a deep dreamer. He dreams really big. This guy sky is the limit for Aaron's dreams. I'll say that. This game would not exist without Aaron. It's the biggest game I've ever worked on, and so he's the guy. He reached out to me and he said, "I want to make a game like Neofeud, but even bigger. I want you to like write the entire game. It's like Terminus, like the other game you made. I want you to like write the entire game, and I will make the game." And I was like, "Are you for real?" Okay, here's the writing for your game. And he's like, "Oh yeah," and he's like made the game, and I was like, "Holy shit!" There's like an 800 room building. One of the buildings has like 800 rooms in it, and you can like go into every single room. And I was like, "How the hell did you do that?" And he's like, "Well, it's a long story." And I was like, "Well, don't tell me how. That's a lot of code that I don't even understand at this point. So you just keep doing that." Anyways, you can also follow Holly at the Tech Fairy, mod VA and partner at the Silverspook Games, also producer and writer for Xanattack. Cade Nix is the Lounge, which is musical media miscellaneous mischief for Misfits, Monsters, and ACAB. And Cade Nix is the also the voices, the antagonist in Decolonators, the bad lady boss that you have to beat at the end. And also, Holly is a primary caregiver, parent, and a manager here at the Silverspook Cooperative. And Holly also is tweeting important things like fucking don't come to Hawaii because or, many reasons. Also, you can follow Lima Hana is a Native Hawaiian, also working on a socialist history. I talked a little bit about that. I'm often talking about it, but the history of socialism in Hawaii and how we actually were spreading aloha and communism, and also we were working on anti-imperialism. And Kanaka Socialist is writing an entire book called Kanaka Socialism, which is about that history of socialism in Hawaii from a long time ago all the way up to the present and the possible future. So follow that for more about that. And also Kama_1983 is another Native Hawaiian who works on spreading information about stopping the desecration of our sacred lands, including Mauna Kea, and stopping the poisoning of our water supplies like at Red Hill, doing land back education, and also has albums like Perfecting Perfection about songs about all of those topics. And yes, so that is pretty much the end of that, and I gotta go eat the food. Lima Hana is often in the Luna Oi's channel, in the streams and stuff. Anyways, thanks. I'm sorry, technical difficulties. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back in the evening for hanging out and stuff. I might be live working on that, finishing the game. We'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I guess I'm trying to finish the promotional stuff for that Indigistar game. So, but we'll be back in the evening. Have a good one. Oh yeah, thanks everybody who are continued patrons. Thanks to these people on the list. Thanks Big Teal. Thanks Holly for modding as always. Watch whatever shows you want to watch. I can't. I talked a lot of shit about a lot of people's favorite things probably, but I'm not. It's not. Like I said, it's not really like the stuff is bad. If it was bad, I would not have read and watched all these things so much. It just. I see now what I see a lot of things that I missed when I was forced to be an American or forced indoctrinated into the white supremacist capitalist liberal whatever that means American system, and I can't undo that. It's still there, but I can see aspects of it that are missing from a lot of media that has been celebrated in and even stuff that I have celebrated, which doesn't make the media and the books and the shows and the entertainment products and the games bad. It just, we could do better is what I'm saying, I think, a lot of the time. All right. Have a good one, everybody.